Alrighty, well, welcome to this week's Talk or Ask Us Anything. As usual, it's been a rather busy week, and there's been a few big items. Nonetheless, the biggest one is obviously the quarterly earnings call, but we'll get to that a little bit later. In other news, it's interesting note or tweet that Elon Musk made, and there was some further reference to it later. And that was that fairly recently produced Tesla Powerwalls to receive an over-the-air software update that will bring between a 50 and 100% power increase, which is quite interesting. So the current Powerwall 2 has a steady state power of 5 kilowatts and a peak ability of 7 kilowatts. So if it's true that they're going to double that, that means you can go from basically steady state of 10 up to a peak of 14 kilowatts, which dramatically alters the way that a Powerwall could ride through something like a temporary power outage, even though obviously its capacity doesn't change. So I think it's still about 13.5 kilowatt hours. A single Powerwall will have a much better chance of actually keeping an entire house alive, notwithstanding that in Australia, well, anywhere in the world, that still is single phase. So great for single phase houses, not as good for 3-phase, but still it's a great development that Tesla have worked out how to get a fair bit of power out of the Powerwall.
Let's just hope that Western Power catches up with that, because for a 3-phase connection, they were still immature to the 3 kilowatts, let alone the 5.
Yes, and thanks for mentioning that, Pete. I actually thought of that exact same thing. I thought, well, I wonder if that might not be applicable to Australia or Western Australia, because of course, yeah, Synergy / Western Power get upset at even 3 kilowatts or the 5 that a Powerwall currently has, and they'd probably have a conniption if Tesla sort of declared that it could do 10. But look, let's hope. Well, I guess that really relies on regulations changing, doesn't it, Pete, for them to actually look at the Powerwall as not a theoretical producer of X kilowatts, but a device that's used for self-consumption with zero net export to the grid. And yeah, let's hope that Western Power and Synergy and everyone else does the right thing. The Office of Energy, I guess, for that matter.
So is that 5 kilowatts to the grid potentially?
Well, yes, potentially, yes, it could be if you wanted it to do that. But that's if it was, say, supporting the grid, or if you wanted to get a higher nighttime feed-in tariff, you could program it if you wanted to export to the grid. But customarily, the Powerwall for a residential purpose is for self-consumption of solar, or you could actually do time shifting. So you could get cheap off-peak power, say charge up on the EV tariff between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., or the Synergy's smart power tariff, which is from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. You could charge up cheaply and then sort of, in a sense, self-consume that cheaper energy at a later time. But it certainly can support the grid. And I mean, in South Australia, they are doing precisely that. So I suggest that in South Australia, those Powerwalls would, if they're young enough, would get the power upgrade. Absolutely. Because that means, well, you know, for say an hour, you could be or a bit over an hour, you could be supporting 10 kilowatts from each and 14 peak from each Powerwall.
Yeah. And in the arbitrage sort of business, yeah.
Absolutely. Or if there's an outage, you know, you could really support the grid on an unplanned outage, which would make a huge difference. So yeah, that's sort of quite interesting. An interesting development.
And this applies to any Powerwalls produced after November of last year. So from November last year, yeah.
Yeah, so I dare say there aren't that many probably in WA, but, well, actually I'm not sure how sales are going, because Tesla has also said quite recently that at least in North America, they will not be supplying Powerwalls without Tesla Solar as part of the install. And I think
or the other way around, they come as a package.
I'm not. Well, you might not have to get a Powerwall if you've got the Tesla Solar or the solar roof, but you can. The only way you can buy a Powerwall is if you're bundling it with a Tesla solar roof. Or
I thought it was the other way around as well. I thought you had to buy the two of them together. You could get the minimal
actually,
Powerwall,
you're right, Paul. Yeah. No, you are right, because I do remember on the earnings call, Elon talking about the difficulty and saying, and I didn't quite understand what he meant, but he was saying that if you combine the two, you could bypass a lot of the problems with the power boards, with having to rewire the power boards.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that was sort of interesting. It sort of didn't make a lot of sense because he was sort of implying it would be on, I think he said it was on the grid side, but I think it's actually on the house side.
Yeah.
The net result being that you didn't need to interfere with the house breakers.
Yes, because you didn't have to split them off. That's right. You didn't have to do that arbitrage of what circuits am I going to back up and what aren't I? Because the Powerwall has sufficient power to basically back up all of them.
Yeah.
On average, which is cool.
Harold, I just wondered there, you know, you've probably heard as well from Rob Maurer and others that some people that have been waiting for their solar roof installs have been charged up to $50,000 extra. It just occurred to me today, I was like, is that price increase saying, well, you now must have 2 or 3 Powerwalls? Or is it
no.
just the
He said a minimum of 1. You had to have 1 Powerwall in the new scheme of things.
But the price rise is not the Powerwall. The price rise is just the solar.
It's the installation, actually, because of the complexity of roof. Yeah.
Which Tesla was quite happy to sign the contract for.
Yeah. I think it's also to do with the price of the materials that go in to the glass roof, the solar glass roof. They've absolutely shot up in cost as well. So I think it's to do with that. But I read or heard somewhere just recently that they're offering, so the customers that were impacted by the price rise, they're considering offering them a free Powerwall to try and sort of smooth out that situation, which is interesting because Powerwalls, another thing that was mentioned on the earnings call, is apparently they've got a backlog for the Powerwalls going back more than a quarter, a multi-quarter backlog. So,
so I dare say
the other thing that Elon said was that he would offer a complete refund for anybody who'd already put down a deposit. Yeah.
But no one wants to
deposits weren't that big. You know, that's not the point, is it? It's the fact that they had a signed contract that was in writing, and Tesla has used a minor clause that is usually reserved for latent conditions which are unknown. But of course, Tesla knew what everyone's roof was because they saw them. You know, they have satellite imagery and they sussed it all out. But unfortunately, because presumably it's more expensive to make these things, they're saying that is a latent condition, which, you know, you'd have to insert a Philadelphia lawyer to see what they can make of that. But anyway, that's the way Tesla rolls in some cases, unfortunately. So moving right along, Tesla has launched an event data recorder online resource for owners to download crash data from their restraints control module. So in the past, it's been really difficult to do that. Tesla themselves have been the only party that can do that. And now they've actually launched a website whereby you can actually order the cables and download the software. The cables, if you buy all of them, it's interestingly enough, it's actually their link is a second company, a second party called crashdatagroup.com, and you can get all the cables for $1,200 US. Unfortunately, they don't ship outside of the US or outside of North America. And for various cars, so I think the Model 3 Model 3 is $200 US. And with that, what you actually get is a crash report, which looks a bit like this.
It's not that easy to decipher, is it?
Yeah, it's got some interesting data.
Oh, okay.
This is an example one from a crash in 2017 for a Model X. It's actually got its the VIN there. So I wouldn't be buying this car if you saw it secondhand. And it's got a lot of blah-de-blah, and it goes down into some statistics. This is in sort of tabular format, but they actually have some nice graphs. So you can see that whoever crashed this car wasn't avoiding the collision. They were driving straight. Lateral pre-crash, there was not much acceleration left or right. And longitudinal pre-crash, not much. Roll rate wasn't that much either. And then the longitudinal delta V, so this is kilometers per hour. So it basically went from steady state to wiping off 60 kilometers per hour in 100 milliseconds.
Wow.
So you could say it went from 60 k's an hour to no k's an hour in 100 milliseconds, which is not a lot of time. And you've got various lateral longitudinal acceleration in G's. You can see it pulled up to 60 G's, and some other data as well. So yeah, it's actually quite a detailed report that you can get, and you've even got the raw data. So yes, you can do this yourself if you pay a couple of $100. And what are those websites, Pete or Richard?
Oh, my US.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A freight forwarder.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of something interesting. At least it gives people a little bit more insight into their cars, which is good. And I guess it also gives local authorities quicker access as well. So you can either get this data yourself, or you can certainly get someone in any capital city or wherever to do it for you.
Harold, do you know if there's a limit in terms of how far back you can go, or how far back they keep the data?
I think it's only for severe crashes. So I think there has to be a threshold, like a crash threshold or deceleration, possibly airbag or something similar, to actually have this event stored in that restraints control module. So I dare say one of the restraints, like supplemental restraints like airbag or something, would have to fire for that data to then be recorded, I think. So unfortunately, I don't think it's like general black box sort of data that you could just keep downloading just for fun, you know, such as all the acceleration figures. I think it's only limited to a small bracket either side of a collision, unfortunately. Okay, so moving now, actually this is another safety aspect. Tesla has now gotten FCC approval to use the 60 gigahertz millimeter wave radar inside the cabin for occupant detection. And Tesla have actually said in the documentation that, well, it says Tesla identifies some potential use cases: child detection, cabin intrusion, and exterior detection, for which sensing would occur only while the vehicle is stationary, and other use cases such as occupant detection and classification, for which the device would sense both while it's stationary and in motion. And also one use case, which is driver's vital signs monitoring, for which the device would sense only while the vehicle is in motion. So there's some excellent safety benefits here. So you can detect if there's a child left in the car while it's parked, or a pet for that matter, but particularly a child, which is a huge boost in safety. I mean, obviously Tesla currently uses their cabin overheat protection, which is selectable, which will reduce the probability of a child dying from heat exhaustion in a car because it only allows the cabin to get to a maximum of 40 degrees, provided there's at least 20% state of charge in the car. Your cabin intrusion is basically another form of car alarm. So if your window's down, but someone reaches in, it can detect that. And some exterior detection, which might be similar for security. But an interesting one is, well, also it'll probably sense the alertness or try and gauge in which direction the driver is facing in conjunction with the internal cabin camera, but also the driver's vital signs. And I think that might be to do with breathing, because it could obviously at millimeter wavelength could detect breathing, which the camera might find difficult to pick up, if not impossible. So I think that's a really big boost in potential future safety advances. So it's a great thing that the FCC has now actually allowed Tesla to implement that. So no doubt, because Elon Musk has described this system before, but obviously have had to wait for approval. And now that approval's come, no doubt those systems will be deployed in cars very soon.
But is that, yeah, so that's only for future cars. So current cars only have the camera, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I presume Tesla wouldn't have fitted these modules without approval, although they might have pending approval, because you just don't have to turn them on. So it could be fitted, just not used. But maybe this is something that might be more restricted to the S and X, the premium models. But I guess depending on how much this radar unit costs, or radar units, sorry, I think there was something like about 3 transmitters and 4 receivers, something like that off the top of my head, that are probably dotted around the cabin. Yeah, I don't know if Tesla's already done it, perhaps. You know, they might have done something, they've done this before, where they've had certain features that they've kept quiet about until they've had an announcement saying that, you know, all cars built since, you know, March 2021 or something, or December 2020, you know, have this feature that has never been turned on.
The FSD chip is a good example of that.
That's right. Yep, they kept that quiet until they announced and then turned it on. So I guess we just don't know. But it's a great either current or future advance in potential safety. I think particularly with child detection, and also the driver's vital signs. So perhaps if a driver is suffering from a medical event that you can't detect on camera, the car may become aware of it quite soon. And you could obviously do things like call emergency services, pull the car over safely, put the hazards on, and, you know, do all the right things. And that I presume that could also happen possibly without autopilot or full self-driving being engaged. It could do that actively if it thought the driver was incapacitated.
Do you know if the car, Harold, do you know if the car does that already? Pull over, like if you don't respond to the steering and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
What does it do?
If you're driving along and you fail and you're on full self-drive and you fail to jiggle the steering wheel when requested, it starts to flash on the screen blue.
Yeah.
Then it says
then it goes red.
Control, and it goes red. And if you still refuse, the hazards come on. It slows down, pulls over, and stops.
Pulls over and stops. Okay.
No, it doesn't pull over. It just basically stops in its lane.
It just stops. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So it'll do that on full self-driving or even autopilot, or whichever way you want to describe it, autopilot / FSD. It doesn't do that. If it's on TAC, it won't at the moment. So on traffic aware cruise control, if you just let go of the steering wheel, if you've had or lane keep assist activated and you start drifting across the lane, if it's a marked road, it will keep you in the lane, but it'll still proceed on TAC unless you get to a traffic light or an intersection and you've got and you've bought FSD, it will then stop at the intersection, whether it's a traffic light or a give way stop sign or a roundabout. It will then stop
and just stay there.
and stay there.
Yeah, I put mine on cruise control, and it will want to have the input every 10 seconds or whatever, and then it gets very cross with you if you don't. And that's just on cruise control. I'm assuming that's autopilot because I've got full self-drive on mine. If I've got it on full self-drive, it gets very angry with you and pulls over. I've never got that far with it because I'm usually sitting there with my hands on the steering wheel anyway to jiggle it. But the other thing it does do, if I watched something on Wham Bam Tesla Cam today, and people, and it was accidents with Tesla, and one of them said, the car phoned me. I was outside talking to the people and the car phoned him, but he was on the phone to the police to check that Tesla phoned him.
Oh, yes.
Tesla had been notified and they phoned him to see if he was all right. So
they do.
Nice useful feature.
Yes,
Wow.
if you've been in a severe crash, they will actually ring you because they get a notification straight away.
Mm.
Okay. Moving
Hi
on.
everyone. Can I just interrupt? This is Saraj.
Oh,
I'm
yes, sir.
just
Joe Wadner. Yes,
yeah,
welcome.
that's right. Yeah, I just joined, and then I feel like I'm just first year students in a university course joining the final year students. Have no idea what you guys are talking about. So technical. I thought you are talking about more about features of the car and all that, but you're talking so technical information. I'm totally lost. But still, I just floating alone, listening what you guys are talking about. Very interesting.
My apologies. What we do, and you're not to know, is we sort of run through news items first,
Right.
and then welcome new people, and you're one of them. And thank
Yeah.
you very much for joining. I think today, actually.
Yeah.
Or was it yes? No, it was
Today.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And also a shout out to Stephen Rogers. Welcome. You're also a new member, and thank you for joining. And I think, apologies, I think Greg, you might be new as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah, awesome. So yes, thank you all for joining. And yes, Zareth, my apologies. I was definitely going to introduce you and welcome you formally.
That's okay.
In a couple of articles. And we will actually, the purpose of this is obviously Ask Us Anything. And we will be going through all the tips and tricks that you don't even realize you need to ask us about. So, and there's no such thing as a silly question, because all of us, every single one of us, before we owned or had our cars, knew very little about them, if not anything about them initially. So there's some of us that have YouTubed and Googled and forumed ourselves to death years before we got our cars in anticipation. But there are others that simply walked into the Osborne Park informal showroom. It's now formal, but it was sort of informal, and basically said, I want to buy one of these things. And, you just basically effectively put your digital fingerprint on the iPad or the iMac that they've got there, order the car, and then receive it and know nothing about it.
I'm one of them.
Awesome.
I haven't got the car yet, but in the process.
It's totally cool because we were all there at one stage. So
That's true.
we're going to fill you with so much information. Your head
Thank
will
you.
be spinning.
Yeah, thank you.
Great thing too is we record these sessions and we put them on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if you suffer from any insomnia, the best thing to do is look back at one of our episodes.
Yes,
We've got
yes.
one that's about as long as Ben-Hur. It's about
Yes.
3 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't set you off to sleep with our dulcet tones, nothing will.
Yeah, sure.
We'll cover everything pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Uh, Now, on a frivolous, here's a frivolous bit of news. Elon Musk is going to host Saturday Night Live on the 8th of May.
sure. Right.
Now, there's no secret that Elon Musk is just about as eloquent as I am in general. So,
He's not that good.
He's
I think I'm being flattered with very faint praise. So that's going to be a very interesting. Well, I don't know. Anyway, that's the news. He's hosting Saturday Night Live on the 8th of May.
You reckon he's going to dance?
Oh, I hope not, because he dances about as well as he talks.
Shanghai style?
I'm hoping that we may be able to announce that on the 12th of May, Elon Musk will be hosting Tokwa Ask Us Anything. So, shout out to Elon. I know you're watching. We've got a much bigger audience than Saturday Night Live. I'll give you a tip. And yeah, you're welcome to join us, Elon. So just man up and do it. It's okay. Oh, now this is another bit of less than ideal news. The model Tesla have updated their Model S and X deliveries into Australia. And if you look over here, the estimated delivery now has slipped to the end of 2022.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of a couple that ordered a Model X, I think it was last week. And I thought it was going to be pretty bad that they'd have to wait for the rest of this year to get their car. But it looks like it's going to be deep into next year. So let's call that 18 months, if not longer, unfortunately. So that's just what it is. There's nothing anyone can do about it. Now, last bit of news is that Starlink has gotten approval to deploy their next 2,814 satellites at a reduced altitude of less than 570 kilometers instead of the previously approved 1,100 kilometers. And that's after they finished their initial 1,584 satellite constellation, which they've almost done. This was very controversial because SpaceX's or Starlink's competitors, namely Amazon in particular, really didn't want this to happen because this is really going to lock in Starlink as the most compelling offering to date, and probably continuing to be the most compelling offering. If you look at their current constellation, these are all the satellites they've got up at the moment, and Perth really isn't that well catered for yet. But all of these are all the satellites in play now. There's another launch in a few days. I think it's only a few days' time. But once they get
Harold, what's that website again? I've been trying to find that one, but I seem to have lost it.
It's satellite.space. So it's up on you should be able to see it on the screen. Satellite.
Oh, I'm not looking at this on the phone, so it's really small.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, satellite.space. SPACE.
But Harold,
Cool,
those
thanks.
aren't geostationary, so that picture is a moment in time.
No, this is actually a live tracking. Well, probably a simulation, or I'm not sure if they're actually actively tracked or they're just being plotted. So if we look, so you can see here, these satellites are at about 550 kilometers in altitude.
And what speed are they traveling over the surface?
27,000 kilometers per hour, roughly. That's orbital speed. The orbital speed doesn't change much at low Earth orbit.
What's the deal with New Zealand? Why does it get so many?
Yeah, but if you look at that map,
No. So what these are, these long diagonal strings of satellites, this is one of the more recent launches.
The recent deployment, okay.
Yes, and you can see that their altitude is 365 kilometers. So they have ion thrusters that slowly boost their altitude up to their operating altitude of about 550 kilometers. So this is a big long string.
Yeah.
And one interesting part of satellite mechanics is if you want to go faster, you stay lower. So when they're in this lower altitude, they're actually going faster than the other satellites.
Yeah.
And you can actually sort of see it if you can be bothered looking at the simulation. So what they do is, in order to spread themselves out, they all bunch together at the same altitude, and then one will slowly gain altitude, which means it falls back to where it should be, and the others accelerate past it. and you just keep sort of slowly incrementing the altitude of these satellites until they're all in the correct orbits and in the correct orbital planes. But basically, there are the best part of 11 or 1,200 satellites in orbit now. This current constellation is planned to be about 1,500 satellites, and that'll give almost, well, not quite full global coverage, but profound coverage over most of the population centers, 24/7, everywhere, land and sea. So they're in multiple planes. There is actually a layout which shows all the orbital planes, and I haven't really quite analyzed this, but anyway, it basically means that they're all evenly spread. And if I get back to close, their next 2,800 satellites will be in this same altitude, roughly. So it means you'll have even more satellites per amount of area. And the great thing about the low Earth orbiting satellites is there's less distance for the speed of light to propagate from one satellite to the other to the ground station. So there's actually a ground station at Wagen. So basically the main internet will be drawn from Wagen up to the near, say, this satellite, and then down to wherever you are. They later will actually skip across satellites to be even faster. But this circle is notionally the footprint of what the satellite can see as far as signal strength. And at the moment, you can see there are some gaps, but those gaps will be closing until you get to the point in some places where you have multiple satellites overlapping. So it's a real game changer for SpaceX. Like I said, Amazon and some others were dead against it because it basically threatens the viability of their own offerings, which are, you know, still being deployed sometime into the future.
Did you see that Jeff Bezos would having a whinge at NASA giving Elon the right to take people to the moon, and he's wanting that stopped. And then Elon gave a very nice tweet. Jeff Bezos can't get it up. Orbital. Into orbit. He added at the end in brackets.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the moment, Jeff Bezos's rocket, all it can do is go up and then come straight down again. It can't circle around the Earth. It can just literally go straight up and straight down. And that's as far as he's gone. You know, like we said last week, NASA has given SpaceX the Starship, has given SpaceX's Starship the right, or the contract to take people to the moon. And that's on the strength of SpaceX doing 4 launches, of which every single one of them blew up on the launch pad in various configurations. But, you know, SpaceX is great at making omelets, and the way they do it is they've got to break some eggs, and they're not shy to do that. You know, how's it go? Iterate quickly and break things, because it's the only way to learn.
Fail quickly.
Yes. Yep. And the more times they fail, the closer they'll get to succeeding.
I think the quote was that NASA would spend 2 years doing one launch and getting it perfect, versus SpaceX taking, you know, two to 4 weeks to relaunch, you know, and they learn from that, and they go on to the next one. So,
and so vastly cheaper. So vastly cheaper. So
anywhere from half price to 1/10 of the price.
Well, and they ask questions like, can we get a rocket to launch back on its own legs rather than ditching it into the ocean? And everyone goes, well, why would you bother? Because the satellite the satellite customers don't care. They will pay $500 million to launch a satellite. So why bother trying to launch it for $100 million or $50 million? And, you know, Elon Musk is obviously famously always says his limit is the limit of physics. You know, what equation in physics limits us from doing something? And he takes that as the upper bound and tries to approach it as closely as he can. And that's what he does all the time. That's why he's so far in front in SpaceX and in Tesla. And I guess you could,
And in AI.
and in AI as well. Exactly.
The speed of thought.
Precisely. And he did mention in the quarterly earnings report about the difficulty in getting something that's consuming 80 watts to perform enough calculations to drive a car. But in reality, that's exactly what our brains do. They probably use a little bit less than 80 watts, but it's pretty cool. So speaking of which, obviously the last news item is Tesla's earnings call and their quarterly earnings results, which on every metric has beaten their previous quarters. They've increased their revenue, increased their GAAP profit. I think their GAAP profit is, non-GAAP profit is earnings is 93 cents per share. And Pete, I think then their GAAP earnings was
About 39, 40 or something. Yeah.
So some people on the street, that one of the first sort of comments is, well, Tesla get these, what they call regulatory credits, which is effectively the car manufacturers. They're really engaging in a joint venture with Tesla, and the regulators actually allowed this to happen. Fiat Chrysler have basically said, we will join our fleet. So there's a requirement in the EU that a car manufacturer produces a fleet of vehicles whose carbon dioxide emissions per kilometre are below a certain threshold. And with their ICE cars, they've got no hope of meeting that sort of requirement. But they're allowed to bring in Tesla's sales in Europe and join them to their fleet to average down the emissions. And in doing so, they prevent the regulators in Europe from fining them billions of dollars in fines for not meeting these regulations. So really, Tesla is in a joint venture with these companies. So one criticism is that Tesla is criticized for, it's sort of, if you look at a simplistic view of the books, they'll say, well, if you took out the $500 million in regulatory credits, Tesla sort of still hasn't made a profit as an ordinary car company, which isn't actually quite true. It's a great headline, and at one level you can easily discount that, because Tesla are doing the hard thing and producing a car that produces zero emissions, whereas the other car companies just can't do it and won't do it, and it's too costly. But Tesla solved it, and for that, Tesla is rightly getting compensation for their efforts from the car companies that have got no effort. One other thing is, a few interesting points is, Tesla's paid about $350 or $60 million in interest payments for their debt. The thing is, they've actually got more cash in the bank and some Bitcoin that would more than wipe out that debt. So again, in that quarter, if Tesla had simply paid off all their debt, their interest, their $350 million of interest would have disappeared, and that would have gone straight to the bottom line. And then Elon Musk himself has received about $380 million, Pete, roughly, I think, of that order.
Yeah,
and
100 plus.
And there's only about 700 million to go in the rest of his compensation package. So yeah, this is not going to, if you want to be including or taking out items that you don't think will be there forever, then you'd be taking out the stock-based compensation before you take out regulatory credits, because I think the regulatory credits will be around for longer than Elon Musk stock-based compensation. So, and then you've got deferred revenue for FSD as well. So,
yes, and circling back to the stock-based compensation, at the time when it was announced, Tesla's market capitalization was $60 billion. And when the compensation was announced, there were two reactions. One was outright laughter, because it proposed that Elon Musk would get paid money if and when Tesla increased its market cap from $60 billion to $650 billion. And at the time, people most of the journalists laughed. And then others said, oh, that would be outrageous, because if Tesla had a market capitalization of $650 billion, Elon Musk would receive by orders of magnitude, the world record for company compensation in shares, like payment, because it was going to be hundreds of billions of dollars of final benefit. So people firstly laughed, and then they tried to feign outrage and say, well, that would just be outrageous that he is ripping off the company by taking such a large payment. Because what the payment scheme is, he gets, for every effectively $60 billion of additional market capitalization from the 60, he gets 1% of the share float, well, the adjusted share float at the time. So after the 12 tranches, he's going to get 12% extra shares in Tesla, and he gets them he gets options to buy them for $70 per share. They're currently $700. So he has to sell about 10% of, well, about 1% of his shares, so he can afford to buy the 10% of the options that he's been allocated. But as Pete said, Tesla have to account for all this expenditure. It's a non-cash item, but it still is an expense item, and it's artificially making Tesla's earnings look a little bit lower than they otherwise would be, because of the 300 and something odd $1 million in share options that they've had to allocate. But as Pete said, Elon Musk is actually running out of these tranches. So in the next couple of quarters, so let's call it the rest of this year, sorry, by the end of this year, all of that will be gone. He would have received his option to buy an additional 12% of the company, or be allocated shares of 12% of the company, which are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. But the point is, he took the company from 60 billion to 650 billion, which at the time was laughable. I mean, I must admit, you know, I said to a couple of mates, I said, look, I wouldn't care how much Elon got. If he could take my shares and 10 bag them, he can have as much money as he likes, because
Absolutely.
I'd also be making a lot of money myself.
Absolutely.
And, you know, here we are in 2021, and it's happened.
And as a shareholder as well, I wouldn't have it any other way. And I mean, you know, it's sort of investing 101. You want the people running the company for their interests to be aligned with yours as a shareholder. And, you know, to put this into context, in the, 12, 15 years or whatever that Tesla's been around, Elon hasn't taken a cent in salary or anything. So he's been working for free for 12 years, or whatever the period's been. And he would have been donating his time for free had Tesla not succeeded. So, and he got very close to going under during the GFC, and, you know, a couple of times during the Model 3 round.
Not strictly true, Pete. In California, when he was living in California, they do have a minimum salary thing. So he had to take, I don't know, 10 grand a year or something.
No, it's actually about $56,000. But Elon Musk has a filing cabinet with 10 or 11 or 12 checks that were written out by Tesla's what's it called? What's PR, not PR, payroll department, and never cashed them. So I think he has to account for it as taxable earnings, but he hasn't actually ever cashed any of those checks. So they were being written to him. And look, you know, if I was worth several $1 billion, would I care to cash a $50,000 check? I don't know. I might not get out of bed for that, but you know,
he probably doesn't even know where they are. He's probably lost them when he moved house.
He could do that thing like that painting at Christie's, where it was sold for $1 million, and when the hammer went down, when the painting was sold, it was in a frame, the painting itself actually then at the bottom of the frame, the artist had put in a shredder, paper shredder, and the painting actually started to shred itself at the end of when it was sold. And they actually said that when that happened, the painting actually doubled in value after it was shredded.
Yeah, that was
Anyway,
Banksy. That was Banksy. Is sort of famous for that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, he's probably left it in the boot of the Roadster, I think.
The Starman's Roadster.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So yes, if the IRS wants to have a look at the check numbers, he'll say, sorry, I put them a long way away, out of reach. But anyway, yeah, so that's all the news. Now we'll go to questions. I know, David, you sent me an email with a very good question about, I guess you'd call it vampire drain. So if you can please repeat your question to everyone and we'll try and answer it.
Yeah, sure. I got caught up in COVID and ended up staying at a friend's place, and I didn't have the normal charging lead I use in the garage, and I was somewhere away from home, and when I put the car in the garage, it had 114 kilometers, enough to get me home. When I woke up in the morning, or when I went to the car next, probably later in the day, only had about 74. And that was starting to get very close to from home. I actually, for luck, have a Type 2 cable with me, and I managed to find a recharging spot. But I just wondered what had happened to my 40 kilometers that was stolen overnight. I just wondered if anyone had any ideas of what I'm not turning off. I don't seem to have the problem when the car is in my own garage. Yeah.
Did you?
I think I know why.
So there's two things. There's firstly, was your car undercover?
Yes.
Sorry, at your garage is undercover. Was it undercover where you were?
Yes.
Okay. Was it a hot day?
Sorry?
Was it a hot day?
No, I mean, so it was only at the weekend.
Because there's two things. There's Sentry mode. So if Sentry mode will use about 250 watts of energy continually. So in a 24-hour period, that's about 6 kilowatt hours, which is actually a non-trivial amount of energy in a 24-hour period for Sentry mode. Now at home, you've probably got Sentry mode turned on, but you've probably got it switched to exclude home.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah, I
doesn't
think
work.
I probably have.
Yeah. So it doesn't work when you're at home, but it does when you're anywhere else. So Sentry mode in 24 hours would have used, let's say between 4 and 6 kilowatt hours. Which
And what's that in kilometers? I don't know.
Well, if it's 6 kilowatt hours, that's
30 or 35.
That's 30 kilometers. Yeah, 35.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So I need to turn off Sentry mode.
Well, what you can do is if you're going to some place and you're going to stay overnight, well, you could just turn it off and then remember to turn it back on again.
Yeah.
Or you can set that location as a favorite and then under your settings for Sentry mode, tick the box that says exclude favorites, because you can exclude home, you can individually, you can exclude home, and you can exclude work, and you can exclude favorites.
But later on, it actually turned off Sentry mode because the
Yes.
battery level was low.
Once it gets to 20%, it will turn off.
Right.
There's a few things that turn off at 20%, so it's important to know this. It'll turn off Sentry mode, and it will also turn off cabin overheat protection, and it'll stop your ability to turn on the air conditioner while you're not in the car. So one great feature with Teslas are that from the Tesla app on your phone, anywhere in the world, you can turn the air conditioner on or off, change the temperature. You cannot do that once your battery gets or reaches 20% or lower in charge.
Well,
that'll be it, David. It'll probably be mostly Sentry mode.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
Cool. So Sarath, you've got a new car, and so
No, I haven't got a new car yet, but I have ordered the new car digitally, as you said.
so what color have you got? Is it
It's black color with white interior.
lovely?
Yes, so supposed to be coming in before end of financial year.
Oh, of course, because Tesla are very keen to deliver cars in the same quarter, so they want to have it before the end of June for sure. That's exciting.
Yeah. So I got few questions. Now, when you say Tesla owners, Western Australia, are you talking about the company owners, or are you because I was a bit confused because you guys were talking about so much of shares and the company interior.
Yep, car owners. The
car
Tesla
owners. Okay, all right.
car owners.
Okay, now that's good. Good to be a shareholder as well. Nothing wrong with that, but I just asked that question. Okay, that's great. The second questions, I got few practical questions. I think Pete or somebody said about that he owns the fully automated car. Did I hear that correct? Is Pete or somebody?
Yes.
Okay. Could you elaborate on that, Pete, if you could? Because I'm still looking at fully automated features, but right now I'm reluctant to do so because, as somebody suggested here on the chat box, I have driven one of these cars recently in the showroom, and I found that when I put into the automated process, and then actually it shifted the lane. And then I said, what's going on here? Then I tried to put it back again, and he said, no, you can't do that. I said, I was a little bit confused. So in relation to automation process, could you please elaborate can you call the car from your hotel to your lounge, not lounge really, from your car park to your hotel, and then get into the car? How does the entire process work? Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah.
There's a couple of restrictions. So you've got to be within about 50 or 60 meters from the car.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be on a non-public road.
Yeah.
So a shopping centre car park counts as a non-public road because that's private property owned by the shopping centre owners.
Mm-hmm.
And the third restriction is it's all GPS based, and GPS is only accurate to within about 3 to 5 meters. So the car might not necessarily come right up to you, but it should come within sort of 5 or 10 meters.
Okay. So if it is an underground car park in Bay, perhaps it may not work because the GPS interruption.
No, it doesn't work underground. No.
Okay. Right. So
but all the other full self-driving features are when you're driving on a highway, a motorway, or a freeway, you need to keep a hand on the steering wheel, of course, but it will drive along. It'll drive at a safe distance behind other cars. If they slow down, it will put the indicator on, change into the right-hand lane. It will then drive past those cars and then put the indicator on and pull back into the center or left-hand lane. And if it's on Navigate on Autopilot, these are all features you can turn on and off. If it's on Navigate on Autopilot, NOA, when it comes to the exit, if you've programmed where you want to go, it comes to an exit, it will literally put the indicator on and exit from the motorway on its own. So it's kind of driving you to your destination on the motorway or the freeway without you doing anything.
So when you put in the autopilot, I think most of the cars do have this autopilot feature. Are you talking the autopilot, or are you talking fully automated features here?
FSD.
It's called FSD, but Tesla refers to it as FSD capability, and it's the last word there that's key. So FSD stands for full self-driving. So the cars can't full self-drive as yet. None of them can. And I mean, apart from maybe the 1,000 under what's called the FSD beta trial in the US, where there's actually a guy on YouTube that's recorded about 5 hours of driving with the car leaving his driveway, traffic lights, roundabouts, going around obstructions on the road. And the car basically drove for 5 hours, and he only had to take over for, less than 30 seconds or so in a sort of a niche situation in a car park. So it's got the ability to do it. It's restricted only to roughly a little bit more than 1,000 cars in the US at the moment. But the idea is that especially with version 9, is that it will be rolled out. So at some point we'll get a button on so those that have bought FSD, so you've got to buy, at the moment it's $10,100 in Australia.
Yeah.
Once we get this latest version of the software, that will probably go up to about $3,000 or $2,000 US. But if you have that feature, you may get a button on your screen which will enable you to opt into the beta program, so into the test program. But even though the car can drive itself with this most advanced version of the software, you're still 100% responsible legally and in every other way for the car. So, and the car, unless you sort of hack into it or do something, as you probably heard Nigel and Paul say, every 10 seconds or so, it will, the screen will flash blue. If you ignore it, it will flash red, and then it will have some audio cues as well. It will start beeping at you. And then, as Nigel said, it will get very cross with you and it will just slow down, put the hazard lights on and just stop.
So if you're looking at whether to pay the $10,100, a couple of pro tips. Firstly, don't do it before you buy the car, because currently there's no discount for buying it with the car delivered. So what happens is the luxury car tax component will kick in and stamp duty, and you'll basically be paying a tax on that $10,100. So the $10,100 becomes, let's call it $13,000 or something like that. So it's certainly better to, if you wanted to buy it. You can even do it on the day of delivery of your car once it's delivered.
Right.
Now, there's a couple of points. As it stands right now, the differences, like you'll get autopilot for free, and that will do effectively full lane keeping with radar control of, like, if cars are slow down in front of you, it will slow down. If you're going around a bendy sort of road, it will just follow the road and do all that sort of stuff automatically. What full self-driving gets you that you can't get for free is automatic parallel and perpendicular parking. So it can do parallel parking by itself. So you just sort of, as you crawl along and pass so if it's parallel parking situation, you go past a parallel parking bay. When you put your foot on the brake, your screen will indicate like a letter P, and will actually show a bay in graphics, and you can tell it to start, and it will automatically reverse parallel park for you. Another thing it can do for the $10,000 is, as I think it was Paul was describing on Navigate on Autopilot, on a major highway or the freeway, it can get an automatically off and off ramp and onto another on ramp if it's like an interchange between two freeways. Or if you're on the freeway, it'll get off the off ramp automatically. But after that, it just reverts to autopilot, which is you have to then take over at some point to go any further.
And then you get Smart Summon, which is that feature where you can get the car to come to you.
Smart Summon. So if you're in a car park situation, and I think it's about 50 or 80 meters, within about 50 or 80 meters, you can tell the car to come to you, and it will do its best. Now, I must admit, look, it's a great party trick, but I don't know, is it about half the time it might freak out and just stay still, and then you're going to have to run after it because there's no one in it, and it's not going to go anywhere else. It's not going to hurt anyone, but it's just going to stop, and then you're going to run towards it and jump in. And then if people are alert, they'll freak out because I'll go, oh my God, there's no one in that car. How did it do that? But one good thing is Elon Musk has stated, and in America, full self-driving is actually, I think it's roughly $10,000 US or thereabouts.
Yeah,
it is now. Yeah.
In Australia, it's not because we don't have all the features that the Americans do yet. Now, the good thing is you've got time, so you will get some warning. It might be about 2 or 3 day warning of if and when the full self-driving upgrade price increases. And then you can choose at that time whether or not to jump then.
I think Elon
yeah.
promised a week on Twitter.
Yeah, I think it
For
practically
new
went down for about
jurisdictions.
3 or 4 days. I think
did
it was
it?
going to be,
Okay.
I think it was going to be almost immediate. Then there was a backlash. Then he sort of said 7 days, but then I think it actually ended up being about 3 days or 4 days. But the point is, you will actually have some time. Like for instance, if we get any inkling of that being announced, I'll send out an email to everyone to say, just in case you haven't, you know, looked at social media or whatever.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you know, a great source of information, if you want to sort of immerse yourself and marinate yourself in all things Tesla, is you can get an app for your phone called Teslarati. So it's Teslarati, Teslarati. And they are a website, it's just teslarati.com, but they do produce a phone app which does the same thing. And that'll just give you daily news snippets, articles. And in that, you'll get news of things such as full self-driving price going up. But there's no rush now. So certainly don't order it now, because it'll cost you an extra $3,000 after you receive the car. But don't feel rushed to order it when you first get your car. You can sort of, if you like, just enjoy the car for what it is, and then decide whether you might have a better use for the money at the top, you know, right now, and maybe jump in later. You know, but unfortunately, yes, look, there's no doubt at the moment, the term FSD capable is there are a lot of people that presume that the car can just fully drive by itself, and it just can't do that yet.
I don't understand why people assume that, because it tells you when you get in the car that it can't, and that you got to keep your hands on the steering wheel and all that sort of thing, you know.
Harold, because it grabs headlines, that's why. That's why the reporters like to report it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, Stephen.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Enjoyed listening to everyone's experiences. Completely new at this, only have had the car a month. So there's features I'm learning every day. But what is evident to me is I bought the car because I enjoy driving. There's no way on earth I'm going to allow a car to drive around for me because I enjoy it too much. Yes, cruise control is awesome on country travel. Rest your leg by all means. But just a few observations, if I can, don't want to bore everyone.
Of course.
When I pick up the car, the salesman said to me, look, I can show you how to change gears. I'm too busy selling cars. Get home and study the screen. So I got home and I studied the screen. And that's how I've been doing it ever since. A question. I believe, and I've got a Model 3, I believe that there is tyre pressure
monitoring.
Sensors, yes.
I haven't seen anything on the screen to indicate that there is a warning or a...
You just need to slide your finger.
Left.
Slide what?
Swipe, left or right. So you know how your screen is divided into 2/3 and then a third, roughly?
Yep.
So where that third is, down the bottom, you slide your finger from one side or the other side, and there's a couple of...
It's left.
It's left, is it?
Just like when you're choosing a female mate to be, maybe.
Well, let's shut everyone up.
Like or dislike.
Stephen,
the salesman said, and I believe this is wrong, there's an 8-year warranty on the motor and battery. I believe that's 4 years.
No.
Yeah, that sounds right. I thought,
Stephen, to get back to the tyre pressure monitoring, I had my car for 5 kilometres and unfortunately I ruptured a tyre, and the first thing happened, the whole screen warned me, stop the car. So instant, and it was, so the warning is excellent.
Excellent.
And you can customize it to PSI or kilopascals.
Yeah, I think 45 pounds is what's recommended in the tyres.
Yep.
Well, that exhausts
Stephen,
my... Yes, go on.
If you get a slow leak, you get a little orange outline of a tyre appearing on the right-hand part of the screen.
Right.
And it's just a little warning. Then you go to the bottom and you swipe left and you'll see which tyre it is. I had that. I had a slow leak.
And does anyone feel guilty when they go into the garage to inflate their tyres, knowing you're damn well never going to buy any more petrol?
I've done it a couple of times and I don't care.
Just buy a chocolate bar.
I actually had to get.
Well, that's me done. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
I actually had to get petrol from my lawnmower, so.
There you go.
Oh my God! So you mean to say that you carried volatile petroleum fuel in your car?
Sacrilege!
That's outrageous.
I think it's about time we went down to Bunnings and got a Ryobi with a battery.
There's an electric lawnmower you can get, Peter.
You got it.
We actually have an electric lawnmower, and but I wouldn't take the petrol in the Tesla. I took it down to the old Commodore, which is my last 18 years.
You have a Commodore? Holy crap!
For 18 years, and it's done sterling service. And I still believe there's a few things better than the Tesla. One of them is the indicators, which I'm still having a lot of trouble with. They don't return. You can't sort of switch them easily. I think the high beam ease of use is not very good on the Tesla. There's a few little things like that which are sort of maybe, I've obviously been using it for 18 years, so but nevertheless it doesn't switch off, and a few times I got caught in traffic, and I got a bit flustered. I clicked the indicator back, and then it went right over and went the other side, and so here's this car wobbling along the road a bit and the indicator's going one way and the other way. I thought
operator error.
If I was king for a day, I'd make an Australian design rule that said that indicators have to be on the right-hand side. Just, like if you're driving the right-hand side of the road, if your steering wheel's on the right-hand side of the car, the indicator's got to be on the right-hand side. If it's on the left, it's got to be on the left. But, we've suffered that.
Tesla are now solving that problem. They're getting rid of the stalks altogether.
That's true.
That's true. For next year.
That's true. On the new S and X, there are buttons on the steering wheel for the indicator.
But the idea is that you don't need to press the buttons.
No.
It's only there as an override. The idea is that the software works out, whether you should be putting the indicator on and which way you're likely to be turning.
Harold?
Yes.
The reason we have the different side indicators on Australian built cars is some half-wit bloody journalists back in the 1970s pushed very hard for just exactly what you've been talking about. My response to that is, why don't you change the accelerator around and put on your left foot instead? The reality is that human beings are best if things don't change. So if you're used to using your left hand, then you should never change it to the right.
Actually, I'm a romantic man, and I like to hold the hand of my lovely wife while I'm driving, and it's difficult to use the left indicator stalk when you're holding with your right hand.
That's what gear sticks are for.
Well, you need to have it sitting on your lap.
I think that's actually called.
Well, there's no bench.
It's full sexual deviations. So yeah.
Harold, just act like a BMW driver and forget the indicators.
Yes.
Oh.
Look, I must admit, I've hired a couple of Teslas in Europe. We've done road trips in Europe in those olden days when you could fly in silver birds and go on holidays, international holidays, and rack up frequent flyer points. One great thing was, because the steering controls are identical in Europe and Australia, it was really easy to use. But anyway, that's an argument I'll probably take to my grave. I still reckon if I was king for a day, I'd say if it's a right-hand drive car, put the indicators on the right-hand side. If it's a left-hand, put it on the outside of the car, the outward side. But anyway, never mind.
What's a lot of fun is if you have two cars and one's got it on one side and the other's got it on the other side.
And the other side is the wipers, so you always turn the wipers on instead of.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, same here.
It's quite easy. I'm going that way. That way.
Yes, and as Peter Ship said, the problem is, and I've done this, you put the car in neutral.
I've got a 20-year-old Commodore, and I flip between the two, and it's so annoying to change gear, and you end up in neutral, and you got nowhere to go.
Oh, where's still, Peter? You could end up in reverse.
No, I don't think it'll let you.
It does.
If you're going less than 3 or 5 kilometres an hour, if you're going really slow,
Yes,
or
yes.
if you're stationary, they will let you. So, yeah, you'll. If you go past the detent, you'll in reverse.
I got 2 cars with it on the left, and it's fine, but I just get caught sometimes, and it's annoying. And I agree with Harold; they should be on the right.
Yeah. Well, they should be self-consistent. They should mirror. It should be a look. And I accept that, Tom. You know, you obviously can't have your accelerator reversed because most people are well. The cars were built for right-handed people, so I guess that your dominant foot is your right foot, and well, it was convention that they chose that the right-hand side was the go part and the left-hand side. Well, actually, the middle was the clutch in the olden days, and then the brake was on the left. I think that's right. No, sorry, that's wrong.
No, clutch was on the far left.
Clutch is on the left, brake in the middle, accelerator on the right.
Yeah.
But the Yanks used to be right-hand drive with state coaches. They only went left-hand drive when cars came out, and they didn't want the same as the POM, so they out of spite put it on the left.
And in fact, I went to the Mercedes Museum in Stuttgart a few years ago, and I forget the brands, but it was basically Mercedes or Daimler.
Daimler Benz.
Their original cars were right-hand drive.
And some of I think the Renault was centre drive.
Yes.
Some of those, but yes.
Yep. As is the Tesla Semi.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, and famously the McLaren F1, that was centre drive because you had the back row seats were for 2 of your friends, one either side behind you.
That was the one that Elon rode off, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Early days. Yeah.
Exactly. So has anyone else got any other questions about cars? Obviously, any new things, charging cables, where to charge it, how to charge it?
I do have those questions actually. These are something that I have already written down. The charging, of course, in personal here, I'm just selfishly asking question relevant to me. That I don't intend to drive very far away, just in the city and around. So I understand that I can do the charging overnight at home. You're talking about somewhere in the previous recording amount of amp, that the plug amp that you should use. Is it a 4 amp that you say that you get free charger with 4 amp or?
No. So firstly, are you getting a SR Plus Model 3 or a long range? Or
No, not the long range, standard what do you call
SR Plus. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, first thing, incidentally, and for anyone else that's here as well that's not aware, if you're getting a current model or a brand new SR Plus, you can set in your charging screen. There is a setting for how much to charge your car to, like what percentage, and the slider starts at 50% and goes all the way to. So the minimum you can charge your car at is 50%, or automatically charge your car at to 50%. All the way up to 100%, and it's in 10% increments. For everyone with a new SR Plus,
it's in 1% increments.
Oh, sorry, but it's in 10% graduations. There's little graduations that you can charge a car 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%. And you can sort of go in between, but there's like a natural sort of place where it sits at these 10% increments. In the SR Plus, made in China, so on your Tesla app, the VIN number will start with LRW. If it's an SR Plus, you'll see that the graduations, they're just like little ticks, like little marks, and you can set your car charging all the way to 100% and just leave it like that. And overnight, you plug your car in, and if it gets to 100%, that's great. If you've got a long-range Model S or a performance Model S, the markings are the same, but they'll have the word daily near the center of that charge screen. And at the right-hand side near the 100% tick mark, it'll say trip. So on those cars, you should set the charging rate or charging limit to 90% or 80%, because the battery doesn't like being
100% charge
at a high rate of charge for too long.
Right.
But on a road trip, it's perfectly fine to do. But anyway, so getting back to, once you've set that, when you first get your car, you will, in the boot, you'll have a unit, what they call a UMC, a universal mobile connector. And it'll have two leads, two tails that you can plug into it, only one at a time, but it'll have two of them. One will be a 10 amp plug, which works in standard general purpose outlets, GPOs. The other one will be a 15 amp plug, which looks the same as the 10, but the earth pin is wider, taller. What's wider, I guess you could call it. And that's for caravan sockets. So so what you can do when you first get your car is plug it in at home, and it will charge your car at approximately, is it 10, 11 Ks an hour? Roughly, Model 3s. So overnight you'll gain,
yes,
120 Ks, 130 kilometers just overnight. So if you plug in when you get home, by the next morning, you'll have an extra 120, 130 kilometers of range, which, as you were saying, Sarah, if there's, if you're only doing it as a daily driver, well, that's probably tons. You can obviously, and you can actually buy a Tesla charger. Well, they call it a HPWC, a high power wall connector. Well, they might have actually changed that name now. It costs $780, and it can charge your car at either 32 amps single phase, if you've only got a single phase house, or 16 amps three phase, if you have a three phase house. The speed is, on a single phase house, you can charge at 50 Ks an hour. So for every hour that your car is plugged in, it can gain 50 kilometers of range on a single phase house, or about 75-ish kilometers per hour if it's three phase. But there's no rush to do that, because even on the 10 amp plug, you can still gain 120 kilometers every night.
Right.
And there's also no rush to do it, because the Tesla wall connectors are the Generation 2 ones that you can get in Australia now. In the US, there's a Generation 3 model that's come out. It's got a slightly thinner cable, and you've got two options of cable length. Importantly, you can update the firmware, because it's got a Wi-Fi connection in the actual charger itself. Previously, the only way you could do that was to use the SIM card or the Wi-Fi in your car when the car was plugged in. And there's a couple of other benefits, but yeah, so I'm not sure if they're just waiting till they sell out of the Generation 2 units before they offer the Gen 3 ones in Australia, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, so you might want to consider whether it's worthwhile waiting, or whether you need one ASAP. It also depends, Sarah, whereabouts you live. So, if you're close to a DC charger, a fast charger, then, the average person drives about 40 kilometres a day. So you'll know how much you drive. And that 120 odd Ks overnight may be enough. But if it's not, and if you're close to a fast charger, so download an app called PlugShare if you haven't done so already. And you probably also, while you're on the App Store, you probably also want to download an app called ChargeFox. And there's another one called NextCharge as well. Yeah, there it is on the screen. So that's the PlugShare app that Harold's got up. And yeah, and you can zoom in. Those icons in brown, they're the DC chargers. They're the faster chargers. They usually start at 50 kilowatts nominal and at least 40 kilowatts, depending on your state of charge and battery temperature and other variables. But roughly that's the UWA one. So that one, and that's Chris's bike. That's the one at the University of Western Australia near the Reed Library. That one's actually free, and that one charges at about 50 kilowatts. So
50 kilowatts for an hour?
50 kilowatts per hour, yes. So your battery will be in the SR Plus, in the made in China one, I think it's a little bit over 50 kilowatt hours. So you should be able to charge that battery from 0 to 100% in roughly, a little bit over an hour. But it's not like a petrol car where you run because it's inconvenient. You have to go out of your way. You have to go and wait, to fill up and all the rest of it. Because it's so convenient just to plug your car in, you'll find that your mindset around refueling your car changes to one of topping up rather than waiting till you go down to near zero and then going to 100%.
Absolutely.
So
that's a point that's often lost on new EV buyers, or even people who are thinking about buying a car. It's like, got to go and charge it up all the time. Well, no, it's a completely different thing. You drive home, you plug it in, you don't even think about it. Every day, you just plug it in. Done.
It takes 5 seconds to plug in, and it takes 5 seconds to unplug. So it takes 10 seconds to do that one cycle. And what you can do is, effectively, when you wake up in the morning, every morning, your car can be effectively full. So rather than a petrol car where you fill it up one day, and that day you try and choose wisely so you don't get ripped off or feel ripped off, because the petrol price changes all the time, you don't fill it up full and then wait till it's nearly empty and then refill it. Like the guys say, you just top it up, and you can do that every night if you wanted to, just out of routine, or every second night, because you'll recover, even on the slowest form of charging, you'll basically recover everything that you drove that day and then some.
A good way to think about it is to compare it to your smartphone. So with your smartphone, you probably charge it overnight, and you'll opportunistically charge it when you need to. And the car charging is very similar. So you charge it overnight, and you might opportunistically charge it when you're at a shopping centre or wherever. Most of the shopping centres, the charging is free as well. That UWA one, like we said, is free, and there's a few other free ones around the place. The important thing to remember is the etiquette around charging is that the charging spots, they're there for cars to charge. They're not necessarily parking spots. So sometimes people will park a car and it's charged at full, and it's not even charging, and 4 hours later it's still sitting there because they decided to take the train to work and come back at 5 o'clock. So you've basically taken up that whole charger for a whole day for anyone else to use. And in a shopping centre where there might only be 2 or 4 chargers, means you've taken up a quarter of the charging capacity in that whole shopping centre for a day. So and on that PlugShare app, you can also you'll notice that once you're charging at a site, you can what's the wording? You can sign in, or you can
register.
Yep.
Check in. So that others know if they're thinking about charging at that charger, they can check beforehand to see if it's occupied or not. Not mandatory, but and just around the city, maybe not so much, but especially if you're outside the city and on longer trips, you definitely want to make sure you check in. That's the word I was looking for, check in, so that others can plan their charging on their longer trips.
And what you can do is, if you're going to embark on a road trip, you can obviously come back here on a Wednesday evening, because we're here every Wednesday, and we can basically step you through and even look on the PlugShare map and basically go, well, let's just say you're going from Perth to Kalgoorlie. How would you do that? And you can see on PlugShare, there's charging at Merredin. Actually, you can also borrow adapters from us, which your car doesn't have. And one will enable you to use 3-phase sockets, which are around. So there's some at Northam, Meriden, Southern Cross, and Kalgoorlie. They're also type 2. So one thing that might be useful, but don't buy any of this stuff yet because you can borrow it from the club for free, is a type 2 to type 2 cable. An example of that is, I've just got to turn on.
And that's the cable that you'll need if you want to charge for free at the shopping centres. So the shopping centres, most of them have a bring your own cable type setup.
So one example, I'll get a better image. Well, there's sort of one. So it's basically a cable that plugs into the charger, and the other end goes into your car. Let's have a look. Oh well, there's one there that you plug in there and plug into the car. That's a Nissan Leaf. Now that cable you can get from the club at a discounted price, but again, don't buy it unless you've got a use case for it. So if, say, for instance, you lived somewhere here in Applecross or somewhere near there, the Woolworths on Reynolds Road has free charging in the underground car park. So if you visit that place often, that's useful. If you're in the northern suburbs, Subiaco home base also has the same setup, which can be useful. That's free charging for, I think, 2 hours, or their parking limit time limit is for 2 hours.
What speed is that charger?
11 kilowatts.
11, yeah.
11, well, it's 22, but it's 11 that your car can use. Oh, sorry, and there are actually quite a few other places.
It's an AC charger.
Cruising around, you've got Floreat Beach, which is a type 2 place as well. That needs a cable.
And Scarborough Beach's got that exact same charger as well.
Yep.
But only one of those.
Slightly north is Scarborough Beach, which has the same setup. There's probably a better image than that. It's actually quite. It's been mounted really low, so there it is. It's low to the ground. So there are lots of places for EVs or Teslas and EVs to charge for free at the moment, and others where you do pay. UWA has the UWA, and also in Guildford there is a free fast DC charger currently, which is at Ross's discount store in Guildford, in James Street in Guildford. That's free fast DC charging. That will charge your car at about 600 kilometers per hour. So if you're there for half an hour, it'll add roughly 300 kilometers of range.
Did I hear you saying that you can't use the free cable we are getting? We have to get a different cable for that, or
no, not the fast DC. So where you see these orange symbol pins, they have their own cable.
Okay.
When you get PlugShare on your phone, and you can do this anytime, you don't need the car to have this. When you first get it, you should set the filters to supercharger, because that's Tesla's supercharger at Eaton near Bunbury. Tesla, and CCS. So 3 settings: supercharger, Tesla, CCS. That's what your car can charge with when you first get it, with no other adapter.
Right.
And these are all the places basically throughout Western Australia where you can charge your car without any adapters.
Okay.
But then we can get more technical and say, well, if you want to use if you want to buy a type 2 cable, then you press the type 2 icon, and there are more places, particularly around town, where you can charge on type 2. Then if you're a bit more adventurous, if you're going out into the country, particularly northwards, if you enable the 3-phase, extra places will pop up with 3-phase, particularly well up north. So for instance, up in this stretch, if we took 3-phase off, you'd lose all these charging locations. So you have to have 3-phase up if you're going well up north. And with that, again, you can borrow that adapter, which is a portable charger from the club for on a road trip for free. Well, it's not for free. It costs you $20 to have that right per annum.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great value. Trust me.
Of course. I got my value. I got my $20 out of it already. Thank you.
That's all right, because you can rewatch this on YouTube, and for all those people who are watching on YouTube, Elon Musk included, and Damon, big shout out, and Joseph and others.
I know he should. Yeah.
Ash, and
Don't forget Ash.
Yes, and Ashley, yes, big shout out to Ash. Thanks for watching, suffering through this video. Make sure you, as Nigel is fond of saying, and where is Nigel? I think we've lost Nigel. Nigel's gone. Oh no, he is there.
I am here.
Sorry, yes, you're here. Your image is not, but that's okay. I missed you in anyway, it doesn't matter. Like and subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. Our channel is Tokwa, so just search for Tokwa. And as Nigel would say, join our Patreon stream, because that's great to get extra funding, but we don't have that. It's cool.
I do.
Yes, patreon.com/Nigel.
/Ferio Retirement Fund.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
But so there's a lot to learn, but you can do it really slowly.
Yeah, I think.
And initially, there's nothing to worry about. You just drive your car and enjoy it. That's the first thing you do.
Yeah.
Around town, there's no compromises. You don't have to worry about anything at all.
Yeah.
Harold,
yes.
In UWA, you can't just roll up and charge. You have to register with an office and obtain a card.
Not at the moment. So at the moment, they've just opened it up. So all you have to do is press the start button and it works.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's had issues. So they've turned the authentication off. So you just press the start button.
Oh, I'll try it.
Yeah, it definitely works. Yes, it's done that for a couple of months now. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But there will be a time when you will need to to register. It is actually free to register if you have something like a MyFair card, such as a
Smart Rider.
Smart Rider, yes.
It wasn't that simple when I went. There was a notice and you had to email this particular department, and they sent me an email to say that you have to go in person to the second level in one of the buildings and obtain a card. So I haven't done it yet.
Oh, actually.
And you can only do it on a Wednesday.
Yes, because the secretary is only working there part-time, and I'll try.
If you've got a compatible card, you may be able to just email them. So I registered just over email, and I just gave them the number of my card, and they enabled the card. So if you have a card like a Smart Rider or
I have. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. So just email them your number and just ask them to enroll that card into the program.
Okay, I'll try.
That may save you having to go there in person.
Yes.
On
a Wednesday.
If you do have to go there, the building you got to go to is this one here. It's the electrical engineering building.
Yes.
And it's on the corner. There's a lift just behind this sort of brick wall. That's like a corner stairwell or lift well. And you just go in and go up to the second level. That's near the physics building, which is here. I don't know what the physical address is, but basically the charger is here. The Reed Library is here.
Yeah, I know where the charger is. It's just outside of the members' car park, and I'm a member of UniClub.
Yes.
And I go to lunch often, but I haven't wangled parking there.
Okay, so if you park there, you go basically through the Reed Library, and this is the physics building, which is the tall building. and electrical engineering is just here, sort
Okay.
of just past it. And like I said, it's just in this corner here.
Okay.
And then you can just fill out the form. But as Pete said, you may be able to do all this by remote control, in the sense that if you can give them your number of your smart rider, you can then they'll just enter that into the system, because it is actually free to join. You only have to pay if you want to get one of those yellow tokens, which is for the AC charges that there are a few around. But you don't necessarily have to bother to get that. I think that costs about $20 to buy
Yes.
that token.
They said that. It might be the person that I emailed or that answered, but it all sounded very long-winded and very small window of opportunity to do it in.
Yes. Yep.
So I'll give it a try. The Uni Club is closed until more than 20 people are allowed. So,
yeah, of course.
on the weekend, yeah.
Which actually, that's a great segue to those that either have booked and paid to drive at our go-kart session this coming Sunday in Joondalup, or those who aren't going to drive but simply want to join in as a spectator and just as a social event. We expect and hope that by the end of midnight on Friday, that the 20-person limit will be rescinded, and it will either revert to unlimited or 4 square meters or 2 square meters or something else. But we're fairly confident that everything will be okay. It'll be fine, and it will proceed. If by some chance it doesn't proceed, we'll obviously send out emails. I'll send out an email to everyone, even those who haven't paid, because there will be people who will just be spectating. But yeah, hopefully, speaking of that 20-person limit, that will be rescinded before the Sunday, and then that event will proceed as normal.
And if there is a 4 square meters per person rule, that building is large enough for 80 or so people to be there quite comfortably, or more. So, and we've only got 48 drivers, but hopefully we'll have at least 48 Teslas there at the car park, all at 3 o'clock on Sunday. So that might be a record, I think, in WA. I don't think we've ever had 48 Teslas in one place. So yeah, it'll be good.
That will be awesome. I do know that there are a few couples that have booked and one family. So yeah, we won't get 48, but it'll be lovely to get.
But we might get spectators, as you said.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I will send out a reminder to everyone that they're more than welcome to be a spectator. And in fact,
there's food there as well. And
yes, and even us drivers will be spectators most of the time, because you get, there's
only 8 on a track at a time.
Yes. Yep.
I think Paul's about to leave us.
Oh, see you, Paul.
There he goes.
Oh yes, it is late for him because he's in Queensland. It's already 11:15.
I might have an early one tonight as well, Harold.
Yeah, cool.
Didn't get much sleep. I woke up for the earnings call and only went to sleep at about 2 o'clock, or just after 2 o'clock. So I only had about an hour and a half sleep before the earnings call, and didn't really catch up last night either. So my eyes are hanging out of my head. It's only my glasses that are keeping me.
Yeah, cool. Actually, I was up late last night too, looking up my my reservation for my Model X, because that Facebook post you had got me thinking in the tweet, and I was determined to find out when I actually paid the deposit and all that sort of stuff. And it took a while because I had Tesla email messages, but the actual one that confirmed my deposit and gave me the sequence number, that came from some person's name. It wasn't Tesla sales. It was an individual employee's account.
Right.
So it took me a while to find.
Yeah, right. So what was your number, just out of interest?
My sequence number was 10.
Oh, wow. So, and that's Australia-wide?
Yeah, so I was the 10th person to order and pay for, well, pay the $6,000 reservation fee for a Model X in Australia.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I hummed and hawed about it for about a year. So had I actually just done it, and the reason was, as you showed on your tweet, Pete, in fact, I'm going to bring it up just to show why I hummed and hawed.
Because of the aesthetics.
It's shocking. It's shocking, shocking. Where do I find? Probably tweets and replies.
It's at ahead of curve and underscore between the words. And capitalized ahead and capitalized curve.
You were the first guy up there, Pete. First one. So here we go. Your tweet. Gee, you're a prolific tweeter there, Pete.
Oh no, it was just the earnings call. I couldn't. There it is. Yeah.
So that is why I hummed and hawed, because that. In fact, I never even got this email. I didn't get this image because you were number 39.
Yep.
When I got it, there was no fancy photo. They just had like a text only email. But yeah, the reservation sequence number is, so you would have gotten a reservation number, like an RN number, but this sequence meant that you were 39th in line.
Yeah.
To choose what to do. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I hummed and hawed.
Bad decision in retrospect, but you know, we're all smart in hindsight. But anyway, I try to make up for it with the Model 3.
Oh, look, and I can tell you now that you have definitely got a better car as a new Model 3 than an old Model X of that generation. The new Model X is awesome. Yeah. You know, even there's a stark difference between mine and Peter Ship's, and they are separated by 3 years. Big difference, huge difference.
What year's yours? Is yours a 16?
It was built in about November 16, and I received it early March 17.
So, and when did you order yours? Must have been sort of early 2014, was it? Or?
Yes. Well, I paid the reservation fee on the 17th or something of January 2014.
14, yeah.
Which locked it in as a completed reservation, because anything up to then, up until you pay the deposit, is nothing.
Yeah.
So at that time, you could actually reserve it, but nothing happened until you paid the deposit.
So if you were number 10, so I paid my $6,000 in December of 2014. So there would have only been people. Yes, there would have been 30 cars in that whole year.
Yeah.
Of 30 reservations of people that put down the $6,000.
Yep, and in the first year there was probably a year, because I think I waited for about a year before I put the money down, because I was unsure of whether I'd go for an S, because I could get an S much sooner. And the funny thing I love on my email, it actually says that deliveries were starting in 2014, and I mean that just never happened.
Well, in the US maybe.
Yeah, but it didn't even happen there. Yeah. They started
for the Model X
at the end of 2015 for the Model X, and they were very slow. You know, it was only at the very end of 2015 that they had some dribbling deliveries, like 10 or so deliveries, and then early 2016 they had the nightmare of the ramp and all that sort of stuff, which is the same thing that happened with Model 3, of course, when they went into production hell.
And same thing seems like is happening with the S and X, or the Palladium as they're calling it internally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it seems like it's causing him. You could tell Elon was a bit stressed on that earnings call as well. You can tell he's under pressure again.
I think he was also grossly distracted by his baby. I'd say that his I don't know if it's fiance or, well, whatever, partner, it almost felt to me like she went, well, I don't care if you're busy on an earnings call, here's the baby, and he probably like took it away or something because he could hear it crying in the background.
Yes, right at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were some times where there was a question asked and there was just silence because everyone was expecting Elon to say something, and then a couple of times one of the other guys would start talking, and then Elon, whether he was distracted or
would come in.
he would then come in and talk over them and stuff. But he's got.
That's why we love him.
Well, we love his company. We love his company's products. I guess that's the best thing to say.
Oh no, I've got a bromance going too.
Harold?
Dear.
Harold?
Tom. Yes, Tom.
Just a quick one. You mentioned that on Wednesdays you're there late. Is that a appropriate time to drop in, is it?
Yeah. Sorry, you mean to my place?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Tesla shop.
I think Harold was talking about virtually. I think he was talking about Zoom meeting. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to. I mean, we did our tour of the Southwest, or tour of the charging stations of the Southwest, and I experienced service station anxiety like I haven't experienced since I was 17-year-old, and had to knock up service station owners at 2 o'clock in the morning for petrol because I'd run out. But, it was quite good in the Southwest in the end once we got ourselves organised, and we found that both the Fox Charge units, well, the one in Margaret River didn't work at all, and the one in Busselton, they had, a bit like was being described in Kojonup, they had to start it for us, and it only worked the second time, so it's obviously a bit dodgy.
Yep.
But our next trip's to Albany, and it's a trip I'm going to have to do regularly, and I guess the anxiety is going to be over the Kojonup one. Now I've been, I guess, comforted a little bit by the fact that the person who lives down there, I can't remember his name. Is it?
I think it was John.
Yeah, John. Yeah, he says that he's had no trouble, so that's a bit encouraging.
Okay, so for instance, on the 28th of April, that's today, it's working fine, so it's back online.
Yep. The real problem is if it's not online, I think I can still get to Albany all right on one full charge, but it's going to be getting pretty dodgy towards the end.
What sort of car have you got, Tom? An SR Plus or a long range?
Long range, and when I'm averaging about, if I put the foot down, I get about 16. If I back off to 95, 100, I get about 14.5. So 15 is probably a reasonable number, which tells you that it's going to do on 100%. It's going to do just under 500 by the time you're allowed to still have something left. And Albany's
about 400 Ks, 400 depending on where you're leaving from. So yeah, you'll be fine. And the great rule on EV driving is if you take off 10 kilometers per hour in speed, so doing 100 in the 110 zone is perfectly okay, particularly if, other cars are doing that anyway. You'll get about 14% better efficiency.
Yeah.
So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I guess I'll see if I can get a tickle at the Woolshed anyway, and just hope that theirs is working, and I don't mind spending half an hour having a cup of coffee. But my concern is when I get to Albany, I probably need to borrow a cable, because the place I stay, I carry a 30-metre cord, but that's going to be a bit messy. So I'm going to have to use the City of Albany Centre. But, if it's not working or something, really the Arana is the next best bet, I think, and that needs a cord.
Just quickly, Sarah, I think you've left your microphone on, and while you're typing, you can hear the sound. I think your
cool.
microphone's near your keyboard. Yeah,
he's done. He's muted. That's all good. Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. That's good.
So I'll perhaps send you an email. But where do you pick these things up from? Do you pick them
from my place? So what I will do is just in chat, I'll put my phone number. Just give me a call.
Yep.
And we can meet up, and then you can just borrow a Type 2 cable.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to talk about was a spare tyre, right? I went with it.
Yes, we have a spare tyre. So the club actually has 2 spare tyres for Model 3s. One is just a spare tyre, or the rim and a tyre, and a separate jack. But we also have what's called a modern spare wheel, which it's really cool. It's all in a bag. It's got the jack, wheel brace, everything included in one kit and caboodle, which you can then just chuck in your boot, and that'll work perfectly fine. It's all self-contained.
And Harold, if you ever get short on wheels or tyres, I've got one as well. So happy to lend that out if anyone needs it.
Cool. Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Pete.
All right.
Yeah, so you can borrow that for a road trip anytime.
Yeah, I'll contact you when it'll be a month's time, I think. But I'll get more confident as time goes on, but I'm a bit old to be knocking up petrol station people at 2 in.
I can tell you that I've run out of petrol a few times. The best thing of technically running out was it was on Wanneroo Road. I think it's a gull that on the corner of Wanneroo Road, or near the corner of Wanneroo Road and Balcatta Road, going south, going up the hill, and my car just ran out, and I coasted to the Bowser and stopped at the Bowser, and then filled up.
Well done.
But I had hair then, and when you run out of petrol, you end up pulling it out. So I think I've run out of petrol too many times, and I've lost all my hair. But look, the main thing with an EV is the car will tell you how it's going. It's not always completely accurate. So sometimes it'll be quite pessimistic and say, it'll be in red and say, charging required to reach destination. But if you're in the poo, you can just slow down, wear safe, and you'll stretch your range out considerably.
Yeah.
Or you can simply, so for instance, going to Albany, you can charge, I'll just bring the map up. You're talking about the woolshed. What you can do is you can do the classic opportunistic charging. So if you want to have a quick coffee break or something at Williams, you just plug in at Williams. And if it's not working, well, what you can do is just keep driving. Yeah. But if it is working, plug in, you'll get 70 kilometers of range per hour or 75 kilometers of range per hour. But if you're there for 30 minutes, you've gotten yourself an extra 35 Ks, which makes a huge difference at the other end. Yeah. And if you get to, say, Kojonup and the fast DC charger isn't working, well, you can just go to the Home Hardware and plug in there. And again, just go and have a coffee at one of the coffee shops. I can't remember if Home Hardware have got a cafe inside. They have got like a little...
No, you go across the road to a little supermarket, and there is some bathrooms and a cafe there.
Cool. There you go. So you can do that and charge opportunistically as well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously...
And they're super nice people.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, at the fast DC charger, and now, like I said, PlugShare, according to PlugShare, as of today, it's working.
Yeah.
So JFK checked in. And that's another great point is you don't have... PlugShare is no different to any other social media platform. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. So you can use it all the time, none of the time, some of the time, whatever you feel comfortable with. But what's really useful is if you come to a place and the status of that location has changed, such as you look and see it's not working. So you go, well, I'll give it a try anyway, because you never know when it starts working again. So never go past a charging spot that is shown as being not operating, because it might have been fixed. So plug in, and if it has been fixed, it's really, really useful. Even if you don't check in often, it's really useful to particularly check in then and say working fine. Or the opposite, if you get to a place and you can't activate it, then it's really great to put that information out there, because then someone else might see that and go, well, I can't charge at Kojonup, I'll charge a bit extra at Williams, or I'll do something else through to Albany.
How do you check in though?
Oh, well, you just
do it on the
account. You just log on to PlugShare. So you go to plugshare.com and you go to register, and you just register with an email address and a password. I think, I can't remember, you probably get a confirmation email or something like that. And then you give yourself, you can give yourself an alias or a login name or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I just use my own name, but others use, pseudonyms or something. And then you can check in. I think you can actually check in anonymously if you're not registered, but it's better if it's yourself, because you can then see other places that you've been at and had check-ins with and whatever. And like I said, there's nothing mandatory about it. It can be quite informational that people will know that you're checked in, because when you check in, it by default, well, some apps, some of the different operating systems have different default times. On my phone, if I check in, it says I'll be here for another hour. You can alter that. You can actually get into the check-in and say I'll be here for another 20 minutes or 8 hours, because if it's slow AC charging, it could take 8 hours to charge. But you can update that so people can see, oh, well, Tom is here at Kojonup. And what they can do is actually message you inside the app. So they can send a message to say, hey, Tom, I'm on Vapors, I'd really love to charge, or will you be here for much longer, or something, that you can have some sort of interaction or optional interaction. But yeah, so it's useful.
The Vapors might not be technically correct, but
Harold, have you noticed there's a supercharger update for Perth?
Oh, that was
I've literally just seen it.
Thank you. Yes,
Perth North.
That was news.
Yeah, the pins around right on the freeway. In Belperra, I think. Yeah.
Apologies.
And the Perth one says Q1 2022, and the Perth North says Q3 2021, and so does Williams show Q3 2021.
Yes, so for everyone playing at home, if you go to tesla.com, you go into you click on charging.
Charging, and then on the road.
And then you scroll down to on the road.
And then learn more.
Learn more. And then scroll down and you'll see a map, and you click on the map, and then you'll get Tesla's interactive map, and you've got filters. So one, I think we actually discussed this. No, we didn't. We didn't discuss this last week. Last week, the news I had last week, because it changed the next day. The news I had last week was it now shows the service centre being correctly in Osborne Park, which is really cool, and also the retail outlet. But if you take the filter to superchargers, it now shows. Originally, it had a Perth supercharger due in Q3 2021, which is now called Perth North. And now there's a new pin for what they now call Perth, which is Q1 next year. Now, don't get fooled about this map pin location. It obviously doesn't mean it's going to be on the overpass. They've basically just decided that it's going to be in a suburb north of Perth, or in the north part of Perth, and they've just by default, just as where you see the Perth one, which is actually in Northbridge, or it's actually at the train station, that's just like a Google generic default Perth pin drop. So Tesla have deliberately moved the pin north to a generic location. So I remember discussing this with Pete, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool? You know, Karrinyup is having a $500 million or so refurbishment. Perhaps it's going to go to Karrinyup, but it's clearly not going to do that. What Pete suggested, which is quite logical, is for it perhaps to be in Joondalup, because as Pete has described, Joondalup is aiming to be a satellite city of Perth. About 18 months or 2 years ago, I had a very, very hot rumor that it was going to Alkimos, which is 43 k's north of Perth. That's very north. And that would be sort of, in one sense, useful if you're going towards Geraldton, because it shortens the distance, but it's really not. Well, Tesla could do it, but I think Pete's suggestion of Joondalup makes a hell of a lot of sense to be the Perth North supercharger. So yeah, thanks, Richard. That's something I totally overlooked.
Yeah, and for a couple of reasons. So one is it's a good spot if you're on your way to Geraldton or Kalbarri or up north, Jurien Bay or what have you. So if you're coming from the city or from south or from Mandurah, you can. It's a good sort of halfway point to recharge. So it'll grab that traffic. But there's also a lot of local traffic in Joondalup, and the most northern DC charger in the metropolitan area at the moment is Gwelup. So, so for anyone that's looking, and there are quite a few Teslas in the northern suburbs now, you know, it just helps to have a fast charger around your house in case there is an emergency or what have you, and you have to drive longer, or you know, it just makes it easier to own an EV if you know there's a DC charger within, you know, 20 or 30 kilometers of you. So yeah, so take advantage of both of those markets, the trip up north as well as a lot of local traffic.
Yeah, so as Pete says, Prime West Gwelup is the most northerly fast DC charger in Greater Perth. The one further north than that is John Edwards's charger at Jurien Bay. And then the one past that, which is Western Australia's most northerly fast DC charger, is Tokwa's very own fast DC charger in Geraldton.
I must say, when we went to Kalbarri last time, that was an absolute godsend. So thank you, Harold.
Yeah, no worries, Pete. It's great that the club's got this asset for all EV users, and that's Pete's hot-looking car right there, with a great wide shot of the and thanks to Golden West Ice for actually donating this location to house that charger, which was, you know, really awesome of them to do.
But yeah, interestingly, that drive to Kalbarri, we only charged in two spots, and that was on John Edwards's biofuel, the used vegetable oil generator at the Caltex in Jurien Bay. So that was put in and paid for by John himself personally. And the one in Geraldton, which was kindly donated by the Tokwa secretary.
Yeah, it's Tokwa's charger. So yeah, that's John's one there, and yeah, that's pretty cool. It actually runs on vegetable oil, used vegetable oil.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
But yeah, if it wasn't for the donations of two individuals, then we basically would have turned a trip with two kids, a 6-7 hour trip with two kids, into a 9 or a 10 hour trip. So made a huge difference.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Welcome back, Lester.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a couple of questions, if I may.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're here for.
Great stuff. First one is, when you're parking, well, I've got an S, as you know, you can't get the front cameras to work, can you? You can't get a 360 view of the car?
Elon Musk has, I think, promised that, Pete. I think he's mentioned a 360 view as a future feature set.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Remember, people were requesting the top-down view?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which many luxury cars have these days, and Tesla, even though it's probably got more cameras than almost any car, hasn't yet done it.
And sensors, 12 sensors, plus a radar.
Yeah, it'll be great. So handy. It's because the S is quite a big car, and you're sort of, it's I'm slowly getting used to it, but it would be handy to have that.
It does have, when you're driving slowly, you do see the physical representation of the ultrasonic sensors detecting objects at the front and the back of your car and on the corners. But you're right, it will be awesome.
Yeah.
And it literally is just a matter of Tesla writing the software to present that on the screen.
Yeah, I'm sure it wouldn't be so very difficult for them.
Not really, no, that's right.
Smart, yeah, smart, yeah.
Well, let's hope that with their new version of, is it version 9? No, what's the new UI, Pete? User interface.
Is it 11?
That's 11, isn't it? Yeah. So when that comes out, would make sense for them to implement that feature then, because that's a great enhancement.
Elon did say that he was going to put in the full self-driving package, but hasn't happened.
Oh, the 360, right?
Yep, helicopter view.
Yes, yep, which would be awesome. That would be fantastic, and a great safety feature as well, obviously, for kids and objects and whatever.
Yeah, and the second question, again, if I may.
Of course.
I think I mentioned to you before that when I charge up my car, it just stops charging. And I have to walk out there physically. I can't get it started with the phone. I physically have to walk out there, unplug it, plug it back in, and we're good to go. Now, I spoke to Adam down in Tesla, and he's sending out a Sparky to have a look at it. But it happened to me the other day.
Is this at home?
Charging for an hour. So I took a photograph of the dash of the Tesla, and it says, charging stopped due to large voltage drop. Remove any extension cords, check utility wiring.
Yes.
Now this, where the car is in a shed, a purpose-built shed, and it's got a purpose-built dedicated line going from the switchboard to the charger, and there's nothing else in the shed that gets turned on. It's like totally dead, you know.
Yep.
All turned off. So do you think it would be the car or the charger, or is there something wrong with the voltage?
Okay. So you're in a more remote part of the grid.
Yep.
And you're in a shed that's on a property.
Yep.
Is it single phase or 3-phase?
Single phase.
Single phase. That makes it worse because the volt drop on single phase is kind of double than on 3-phase, because on single phase, you've got the volt drop on the active copper and on the neutral return. Whereas on 3-phase, you've only got it in notionally one direction because there is no power going through the neutral on 3-phase. So 3-phase, you'll have a worse effect. So single phase, you'll have a worse voltage drop than 3-phase. What you could do, Lester, what you could try. So what are you charging your car at? Is it 32 amps single phase?
Yes, 32 amps, yeah.
Right. If you're not in a hurry, so if you're charging overnight, you could try and say drop it to 20 amps and see what happens. That should probably stop it. And then you can experiment and inch it up until it chucks a wobbly.
Yeah, right. So how do you do that? How do you?
Oh, so okay. So you hop in your car,
Yeah.
And you bring up, and this works for Model 3s as well. You bring up your charging screen while you're plugged in, and there's an up and down arrow for the current. Where it shows current,
right.
You just use your down arrow and reduce it to whatever you want. You can go all the way down to 5 amps, but I mean, that's not practical because you're not going to charge at any great rate. But you can adjust it down a bit and see how that goes. And the great thing about that is that is linked to your GPS location. So if you go somewhere else, your car will still charge. It'll remember that you're not at home anymore, and it will charge at full rate anywhere else, or any rate that you tell the car at that location.
So when like as I say, it says charging stopped due to large voltage drop.
Mm-hmm.
So does that normally happen, and you can't restart it again? Is that normal?
Because the car is concerned that there might be a fault in your cabling somewhere.
Okay.
It might start a fire. Because some faults in cabling could be a bad connection, which becomes resistive, heats up, the resistance increases, and it drops the voltage. And the car it's been programmed to be concerned or interpret a lower than a certain threshold voltage as being a potential source of danger. So then it will just stop charging, and it won't sort of like wait for a few minutes and reconnect. It just gives up. But it sends you a notification to your phone and tells you that charging has been interrupted, but it won't reset by itself.
Yeah, well, it sends me a notice to the phone when charging is finished, but when it's interrupted, the only way I know that it's interrupted is I've actually got to go in and see how I'm charging and go, oh, it stopped. I don't get a signal back to the phone.
You ought to. I just check under the settings whether or not that's an optional setting. I think there is some option notifications. Yes. Okay. So go to settings. So you see the little settings wheel on the top left. You press that, and you got settings, and there is notifications. Okay, so then you press notifications.
Settings, yeah.
And you can see that you can set it to charging started, charging interrupted, and charging.
Oh, right, yeah, my charging interrupted is not ticked.
Yep. So usually the one you want to know about is charging interrupted, because that means you've got to go and do something, because it's interrupted without you wanting it to be. You may not care that your car is fully charged because, well, who cares? It's a little bit like your phone. If you're going to bed at night and you put your phone on the charger, you don't care when it's finished charging, but you might want to care if for some reason the phone has decided to stop charging, because you don't want to wake up in the morning and have it not fully charged.
Yeah.
So just go to notifications and select charging interrupted, and then it will send you a notification.
Great stuff.
But experiment, maybe pick 20 amps as an initial experiment. You can do like a successive approximation. Pick something low. If it works, go halfway. If it still works, go halfway again until you get the sweet spot.
And it seems when the battery is low, it draws more juice. That's when the problem occurs.
No. It doesn't draw any more than the 32 amps that it's set to.
Oh, okay.
So it'll never go higher than that, but it can go less once the car is approaching 100%.
Yeah, right.
It'll back off a bit. But again, in your car, Lester, you shouldn't customarily charge it to 100. You should charge it to 90. Yeah.
Only you just run it at 80. I mean, I only go around town. Very rarely do I go bush. So I've got the guy at Tesla, Andy, I think his name is. He's going to in motion now. They're going to send out another one of those silver wall chargers.
Yep.
And an electrician. So should I stop that? Because he said if the fault's not in the car or the charger,
you'll be invited to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe I should stop that and say, look, hang on.
Yes, do stop it. I recommend you stop it because I know that in your situation, you've got a long cable run and you're in single phase.
Yep.
So your solution, your immediate solution is reduce the current, and that will fix the problem. Your longer term solution is either do nothing or think about changing the power or where you charge your car. 3-phase will give you less volt drop than single phase. And like I said, the effect is quite stark, the difference between the two.
And a lot quicker.
Yes.
3-phase.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Your car on 3-phase at full rate will charge at 75 or 80 kilometers. Actually, your car, Lester, I think it's closer to 90 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, which is about 3 times what I'm getting now. I'm getting about 30 k's an hour now, 35.
Oh, right. Okay. Maybe you've got 20 amps, 3-phase. That's interesting. Not sure. But anyway, so basically, yeah, initially reduce your current.
Yep.
Your car will charge slower, but at least it'll keep charging.
Yeah, right.
Or just put up with, there might also be a time of day effect. So possibly in the middle of the day when there's lots of solar around your area pumping out energy, all the voltages will be a bit higher. It might be during the evening peak that it might sag off a bit, but then it might also recover after say 9 p.m.
Yeah, it went off at 5.
Yeah,
and the thing is,
5 p.m.
Yeah.
Well, that's the sum. That's the classic duck curve peak.
Okay. The thing is, I can walk out and just unplug it and plug it straight back in.
And it might be okay, or plug it in, but tell the car not to start charging until say 10 p.m.
Oh, okay.
And by that time, the voltages would have recovered.
Yeah.
So you've got to do a bit of experimentation.
Sure.
I do recommend you cancel.
Yep.
The service call because.
And that's why I wanted to ask you. Yeah.
Yes. Because otherwise, Adam and Tesla will invite you to pay for the electrician and all that stuff. And that's
not only invite, they'll probably insist.
Well, I say invite in the most polite terms.
Yeah, I know. See, the run from the switchboard to the actual charge is only about 15 feet. It's the run from the other switchboard to the shed that's about 40 meters.
Yep. And on single phase, that volt drop kills you.
Yeah.
That's the problem right there.
Unless you use really fat cable.
Do you know how thick the cable is? Is it 6 square mil or 4 square mil? Do you know?
It's going to the charger is 6 mil.
Oh, okay.
And coming
what about
up
the shed to the house?
To the shed from the main switchboard, which is in another shed, to the to where the switchboard is in the other shed is probably that's much bigger than 6 mil. It's probably about 12 mil, I think. It's pretty fat.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's nothing else in that shed runs at all, just the charger. That's all I have on. Yeah,
but
I'll do what you suggest, and I'll certainly get onto them in the morning and cancel everything.
Yeah, yes, because it's not going to be the charger. It's not a charger. It's not going to be the wall connector. It's definitely not.
And it won't be the car.
No.
Car's brand new.
Things can happen, but no, it's not. It's a classic case of single phase in a rural area,
edge of the grid,
end of the line of the grid, and on the end of the duck curve, where all the voltages are sagging because all the solar is abating, and people are arriving home and turning on their ovens and air cons and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But like I said, you can basically adjust it by postponing the commencement of your charging until 9 or 10 o'clock, or just reduce your current down. And look, if you took 5 amps off, it might take your car an extra hour or 2 to charge.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because you're asleep. Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, it's overnight charge anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But long term, you could decide to change where you charge your car or upgrade to 3-phase if you've got 3-phase in the house or somewhere else.
I can upgrade to 3-phase. I've got to do a 50 meter 3-phase run.
Won't be cheap.
What? Yeah. Why don't you just move your car closer to your house?
So why don't you move your house closer to your car?
Probably easier, yeah. No, I've got this shed I built not specifically for this car, but it's where I want to keep the car, yeah.
That's cool.
No, it'll easier to do that. I'll try it while you say the single phase anyway and tone it down a bit.
Yes,
and that'll probably be enough.
It'll work.
Only run it from about 50% up to 80%, which only takes not that long, you know.
Yeah, that'll fix it, guaranteed. You can't beat I squared R losses. Oh, Carmen, you're going. No.
I have just returned from Queensland.
Oh, yes.
And it's a bit late.
Oh, of course. Well,
I had an awesome time.
Fantastic. Yeah, I was just going to say, how was it? But you just answered that. So where did you go? Did you go on the Gold Coast or?
Yes, I went to Cairns, Port Douglas, Palm Cove and Surfers.
Nice.
Visiting,
Cairns, all the way up to Cairns. I haven't ever been to Cairns.
Cairns is really good. I have friends there.
See you, Lester. You go? Yep. Oh, that's right. Sorry.
The main reason was to go and see my brother who had been ill, but and I thought something might happen. But I took the opportunity to do a bit of R&R as well and visit friends. And I avoided Brisbane as it was a hotspot at the time, but it was really good. Life seemed to be pretty normal over there. And I've come back for lockdown and yesterday, yeah.
Yes, well, yeah, we had a bit of activity, but thankfully it's only for 3 days.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yeah.
But,
yeah. So the only thing was the development. It's pretty depressing over there. It's just so much of it.
Oh, like you mean at Surfers Paradise on the beach? Yeah.
High rise, yeah. Surfers is ruined forever. It looks like Hong Kong.
Yeah, but it's awesome if you've got one of those apartments on the 50th floor and you've got great views of the ocean. It's awesome.
Well, actually, I was on a 6th floor apartment block, and the fire alarm went off in the middle of the night. And the recorded message said, be on standby for activation. So I thought I better get dressed and get ready. And then as soon as I was dressed and thinking about what should I take, the message changed to evacuate now. Seriously. And so we all went down the stairwell. Now in the stairwell, it was full of people because I was in a small apartment block. It was only 9 stories, but everybody was in the stairwell. And it took a while to get down there. And when we got down there, the fire brigade didn't come for another 20 minutes. And we were all just listening to the alarm in the dark outside. Some people had left with pajamas. Others took their baggage down. And then I thought, oh, I should have gone to grab this. Should I go up? No, I don't think so. And it was cold. And the firemen arrived not looking too impressed. And apparently it had gone off before. But some guy had punched the glass in the fire alarm, and they think he was under some influence. Yes. So after about 20 minutes, we were all told to go back to our rooms.
Yeah, well, the problem is obviously the firefighters. No matter, even though they know there's no fire, they have to check every floor.
Yeah,
they check the system.
They went straight to the board, but the hotel had told me that they were renovating the 2nd floor. So on the next day, I stopped at the 2nd floor to see what they were doing, and it was all burnt out.
That's interesting. So in other words, there was a fire, not that day.
Not
There was
that
one
day.
earlier. Wow.
And I tried to find out what had happened, and apparently it had burned down a month previously.
There you go.
So that's a
There you
bit
go.
scary. So that was
Yeah.
the excitement. The rest of it was pretty cool and beautiful weather. Met lots of friends and relatives, and everything was pretty normal.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's funny, speaking of sort of COVID type stuff, I took the opportunity because there's no secret that I'm just a bit above 50, just on. And I heard a rumor from Ken actually, who went yesterday, for 50-year-olds plus up to 70, that's the 2A category, you can get your AstraZeneca jab.
Yes.
Well, it was officially from Monday the 3rd.
Yes.
But if you go to Claremont Showgrounds, it's
Yes.
gate 8. That's the
Okay.
state-run. That's one of the main entrances at gate 8. The state-run clinic.
Yes.
I got my jab today. Just walked in.
Oh,
It
how
took
do you
half
feel?
an hour.
Well, you
and-
look normal.
yeah, that's right. Yes, I'm perfectly okay. I believe it's usually 12 hours before you get symptoms.
Okay.
And then normal. That's just like, you get a bit of a fever or whatever, because the AstraZeneca is a live.
Yes.
What virus is it, Peter? It starts with N. It's
no,
N for November. Not Nora. It's
NRMA.
No.
NMRN.
Anyway, they use a live virus as a vector to introduce the protein coding for the whatever it is, the spike 2 protein or whatever. And because that vector virus, the real virus, you do get some minor viral symptoms.
My son is asthmatic, and he's
too.
told me, yeah, he had it last week.
Yep.
And he just had a sore arm.
Yep.
And felt a little bit off for a few hours, but he's fine.
Yeah.
And we'll have his second shot next week.
Well, look, that clinic was really good because I just walked in casually.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Just walked
Yeah.
in, and you sort of sit down in a row of 10, and there are about 6 rows of 10. And what happens is you sort of you start at the back, and then every few minutes they get the front row to go through the pearly gates into where they're going to vaccinate. But before then, you've got a bit like going voting, where you go and see a couple of people, or you see someone. They got a laptop, they take your name from your driver's license and your Medicare card, ask you the questions. You then wait, go in to get vaccinated. They ask you the same questions. When you're finished, you go to another section where you wait 15 minutes. And in the meantime, you also book in your next vaccination, which for me is in July.
Yes.
So that was really convenient. And it was actually early. So for anyone above 50 or 50 plus can just go and do it at your leisure.
I definitely qualify.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, we never discuss a lady's age, but you don't qualify for 1B, so you're definitely in 2A category.
Yeah.
And they're available now. So that's a little pro tip.
Yes. Well, that's something that I will do, because you might as well get it out of the way.
Yes. Oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And like I said, the whole process from start to finish took less than an hour. And that was from, waiting the 15 minutes and all that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, good to know. Well, I'm not far from there, so I'll give it a try. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm still catching up on sleep.
Yes.
I'll say good night.
Yep, no worries, Carmen. Take care.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah, great. Thanks,
Cheers.
guys. Good night.
No worries.
Yeah, farewell. I might head off as well, Harold.
Yeah, no worries.
Sleep to chop on.
Yeah, it's 10:05. So unless anyone else has got any burning questions, we could wrap. Oh, Peter, you got something or?
Well, I'm going to be five or six things actually.
Okay. Well, all right. What I'll do is I'll let Pete and Tom. I think you were going to go. Yeah. You guys go get some sleep.
Yeah.
Have a good week. We'll see you next week, Pete. Well, on Sunday probably.
See you on Sunday.
Cheers. All right. No worries. Take care.
See you guys. Bye.
Cheers. Yeah, go Pete.
I'll be as quick as I can.
Yes.
I'm 1B. With the latest data, I've calculated my mortality with COVID as about 5% with my various illnesses and so on. So it's much more significant for me. My mortality is quite a few, a factor of quite a few more than the average person. About 1 in 50, we're about 2% or something in the US anyway. So that's the first thing. Second is I sort of just worked out why the superchargers in Eton. It's never really sort of occurred to me before, but if you're from Tesla, you're going to say, okay, look, what sort of trip are affluent people going to make? They're going to want to go from the main city centre to somewhere where affluent people go and drink wine in Margaret River. And basically halfway there is Eton, give or take, so you can drive there and that's the place to put the charger, not maybe not in Perth, maybe there's sort of, it was quick and easy to put it in Eton, but it's roughly about halfway. So that's the second thing.
Yes.
The third thing is my wife reminds me that she's got a front view. She's got a Mazda 3 at half the cost of my car, less than half. Hers has got a front view thing, and she just reminds me about that quite frequently. But she's also got a much better paint job than the Teslas, the red Teslas have anyway. The third thing is with the Starlink thing. I don't know if you have noticed, or it's sort of an absence of notice, is that I haven't heard any astronomers complaining about Starlink lately. It used to be everywhere. They say dreadful, it's going to ruin astronomy and so on. But basically they've got, the problem is at sunset when it's sort of lit. Like we can see the International Space Station go over, but only just after sunset, so it's lit. I think that's part of the problem. And people took the most obvious photos, which is not necessarily when you do your deep astronomy. So, but anyway, it's just anything I haven't sort of seen that as a major sort of thing recently. The third thing is, fourth thing or whatever, is I had a person. I had a second referral, and this is someone it seemed to come. It was Owen. Do you know any Owen that's got a Tesla about December? They seem to get a referral link, and so I'm actually getting supercharging from back in December, and I'm sure that only appeared on my computer recently. But anyway, so I've got free supercharging up, or 2,500 kilometres up until December. So I'm sort of.
Yeah, cool. Well, obviously you're nearby Eton, so not that far.
It's 20 k's. It's hardly worth driving there. If I charge at night at home, it's probably cheaper. So anyway.
Yeah, but you might do it once a week. You might go to Eton for a.
Yeah, I've been doing it just because I could really, and it works fine. When you told me, I don't know, I haven't had any problems since. Remember, I sort of rang you and I said superchargers couldn't get it out of the thing. So
yes, the holster. Yes, it can be a bit tricky. Someone might have just jammed it in there a bit.
I've been working out since then. So there's something else I've left out of here. I can't remember what it was. But the other thing is the share price opened quite low, 695-ish or something thereabouts. It's now sort of just the last 10 minutes sort of shot up about 0.5% or whatever.
Oh yes, it's up 0.22%. Yes.
Sure, there's been some news just the last sort of very short time, but
it's a bit hard to tell. I mean, on a macro environment for Tesla, for instance, the Biden administration has committed the US to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by between 50 and 55% or 52.5%. by 2030, which is only 9 years, less than 9 years. And of course, a lot of analysts just presume that Tesla is a car company, but nothing could be further from the truth. There'll be a time when the car business is the minority part of their business. So, you don't know, news comes and goes really quickly and the share price moves even faster. But
I'm going to hodl my shares anyway. I'm going to hodl my shares. So, yeah.
So am I, just quietly. So am I. Look, I promise I'll sell all my shares when they get to $3,000 a share. I'm happy to get out, no problem. Yes, but before that, I'm a holder. not a folder. And like I said, a lot of the market wasn't that happy with the results at the earnings call. But again, when at the start of the show, we were talking about the fact that, you know, if you see the bottom line, which is you made $500 million profit, and that's not that much, and you got regulatory credits, but they ignore the $300 million in interest that they could have easily not have to pay because they've got more than that amount of cash on hand to offset all the debt. But they've chosen for, what would you call it? It gives them much more options to quickly invest without having to go back to the market. So there's no point retiring debt for the sake of it. You know, for a company like Tesla, I forget how much cash they've got on hand. It's it's like a dozen billion or something. It's many billions of dollars. You know, 300 million in interest is, it's a rounding error as far as they're concerned, for the convenience of having all that cash at hand where they can just invest it. I mean, you look at the investments they're making at Gigafactory in Texas and in Berlin, you know, they're buying robots like they went out of fashion and installing them. So it's great to have all that cash on hand so they can basically, you know, expand all their manufacturing, which they're doing at a great rate of knots. So yeah, so the market can be a bit negative because it chooses to not understand the whole picture. And they'll take the fact that they paid Elon Musk $350 million of his share entitlement. They'll take that as being a bad thing. But the fact is, as Pete Petrosky earlier said, they're going to burn out of those entitlements by the end of this year because he would have gotten the entire 12% of share options that they all would have evaporated or been realized by the end of this year. So, you know, every quarter you can then add back that $300 million. The same as the interest. And, you know, the regulatory credits are there because other car manufacturers have actively chosen not to produce EVs at this stage. And it's right that Tesla, having done all the hard yards, gets paid for their laziness effectively. So yeah, so, you know, I wouldn't, what's that saying, that in the short term, the share market is a voting device, but in the long term, it's a weighing device or weighing machine.
And it's also buying the rumors and selling the news and so on. That was all. That's the you know, that wasn't really unexpected, I would have thought, but they really have to make a big profit to. But it doesn't. You know, the numbers are all good. Everything else seems pretty optimistic, and then you know, the crashes are sort of a thing in the wind. You know, just a transient thing. And the China thing is a nothing sort of thing. It'll blow over fairly quickly, I would have thought.
The only negativity at the moment is the Model S and X delayed rollout, and a lot of that dovetails into another development which all companies are being marinated in to various degrees, and that's firstly the semiconductor shortage, which is a global shortage. And mind you, there are other car companies that have suspended entire product lines. I haven't bothered to remember what they were, but they're, you know, some of the SUVs, Toyota, Honda, and others and Ford and General Motors have said, you know, we're going to stop production of XYZ line for, you know, several between days and weeks. So it's having a big effect on them. The other thing too is that I heard more recently from a totally different source. This had to do with hardware type stuff like home improvement hardware and whatever. Is because of the Texas power outage and the extreme climate, the extreme weather that they had, that weather event. Apparently, there are some factories that have stopped operating, and one is producing resin in vast quantities. And this resin is required for various plastic products. And some of the petrochemical products, like plastics, are apparently in short supply. So there are a lot of macro factors, well, like I said, micro factors, that are affecting all manufacturers, and Tesla's just one of them, but they seem to be less affected, or at least they've still performed fantastically well in spite of those pitfalls that are around at the moment. So, you know, but look, in the long term, you know, Texas hasn't even started yet. Berlin hasn't started yet. Between the two of those plants, you know, I think Berlin is configured for nearly 500,000 cars once it's at full rate, with that one section, that what they've got building now, and Texas is similar. So Elon Musk did say at the quarterly earnings report call, that he expects in the next year or so for Model Y to be the world's most popular model of all vehicles. And I think that's the Toyota Corolla, which is about 1.2 million cars per annum. So, you know, Tesla only produced 500,000 cars last year. So imagine doing 1.2 or 1.3 million Model Ys in a couple of years' time. You know, and one great thing was each quarter Tesla is improving their operating margin on the vehicles. So yeah, look, the share price can confound you. I mean, you know, when you hear that iron ore prices have hit another record high, you know, companies like FMG and Rio and BHP go down because the shareholders are going, oh well, maybe that's the top of the cycle, we better sell. You know, what's the other saying, that the share market can be irrational longer than you can have liquidity. So, you know, but anyway, it's all good. Any other sort of news bits or questions or whatever before we maybe wrap this up for tonight, since we've all had a big day?
Just before you go, Harold.
Yes.
Yeah, I did that. I got it all happening up there, and I put it on. Is that seeable? Too shiny, is it?
Yeah. No, yeah. You can't do current there, Lester. Sorry. You go and say what were you going to say?
Yeah, I put it onto 25
amps.
25 amp.
Yep.
And it's fine. And
incidentally, what's the voltage? It should show there on your screen.
223 volts.
Oh, yeah, that's low. Yes. Yep. I mean, that's okay. It's acceptable. I think it cuts out at 220. So that's fine. That's going to fix that problem for the time being.
Yeah, right. It's charging at 25 k's an hour.
Yes. So what you'll find is if you ramp it up to maximum, that voltage will go down in proportion.
Okay. So,
and equally, if you decrease the current, it will go up a bit. But yeah, 223 is not high, because our official voltage in Western Australia is 240 volts.
Yeah. Yeah, 225 now, we're going up.
Yes, and I dare say that's probably a classic case of the load of everyone's going to bed, as we will shortly.
Yeah.
So things like TVs are getting turned off and all that sort of stuff. And lighting, of course. So yeah, that is definitely a voltage effect. Yeah. So that's
So I guess for my long-term solution, I guess the thing would be to run a three-phase up there, because I've got that. It's about 50 meters, but I just get a trencher and I can just get it up there in a day.
Yeah. Yeah, three-phase has that wonderful thing. If it's perfectly balanced, there is zero current that flows through the neutral.
Okay.
Which sort of doesn't notionally make sense. You think everything has to go to neutral, but it doesn't. It basically just, with angles and dangles, it just works itself out. So it makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yeah.
But that's great. So now your car will charge at 25 k's an hour. I mean, you know, in 5 hours or 6 hours, you've got, you know.
Well, 10 hours, I've got 250 k's. I mean, it'll be fully charged in, about 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't never run it down to about 50% usually.
Yep.
And that's not a problem, is it? Running it from 50 to 80, 50 to 80?
Not at all. Not at all.
And
perfectly fine.
That suits because, as I say, it's just city. I'm just burning around the city, you know.
Yep. At that level of charge, your car will last forever. The battery will last forever.
I won't know.
Sadly not, no.
All good.
But actually,
Okay, then thanks a lot. I'll probably catch up to you next week.
yeah, no worries. I think it might be a good time to maybe call it a night this week. We've got this Sunday pending announcements. We've got the thing at the go-karts. So everyone who hasn't booked, you're more than welcome to be a spectator and join in on the social sort of aspect. If not, we've also got a casual meetup at the Guildford Hotel next Wednesday. So in fact, we won't be here next Wednesday because it'll be our casual meetup at the Guildford Hotel. But I'll send that email out tomorrow. So that's all cool. So in the meantime, like I said, for everyone watching, big shout out. Thank you for watching on YouTube later on. Please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. For everyone here, thanks for joining us. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. So take care of yourselves and have a great week.
All right.
All right. Cheers. Good night.
Bye.